That's my hype music. Yeah, man, we got a juicy one for today. I just moved my microphone, changed the cordage. How does Martin Leakey say it? The cordage, the assemblage, the foodage. Sound is good. Excellent. We got a lot to cover today. But I'm pretty sure we're going to go through it very, very fast. The juicage. Yeah, that's Jamie Robbins. You're right. It's the juicage. So the last thing I saw before I came onto the video right now was I was just looking over X, some of the recent posts that I had done. And you guys know I'm going to share a little bit more about the Zodiac here and why I am firmly convinced that the Zodiac does not, the solar Zodiac of Aries through Pisces wasn't even possible until after the 7th century, 8th century BC. It was a totally different Zodiac back then because the sky sim was moving totally differently. And it's even reflected in Greek mythology how the old order was deposed, and it was Apollo in agreement with Mother Earth to bring in Aries, Cancer, Gemini, all these new star patterns. This new order was brought in only after Orion was deposed. It's very interesting. I'm going to show you some images today, but that's really going to be a separate video. But the day the sun stood still and then moved 10 degrees backwards was the day the Zodiac changed. It also the day that every civilization in the world changed their calendar from 360 days to 365.24 days. However, it took over 100 years for a lot of cultures and civilizations to get the year right. Some of them stuck with 365 or 364. Many of them rounded it off to 364 because it's divisible by 52, the ancient calendar round in America. But anyway, we'll get to all that. So the last thing I saw on X was Micah Dank made a comment when I was discussing this in a post that he can prove that the Zodiac of Aries through Pisces is actually 6,000 years old. Well, I'm going to call him on that. He's going to have to prove that to me. He was going to be on my guest on my show real quick. Me and Big John are scheduling people. But he's going to have to show that. There's a whole list of people that are trying to get on my show because they say they can prove this and say they can prove that. But I need to see you prove it before you can come on my show and show it to my community. Yeah, go ahead, Micah Dank. Get that video done. If you can prove it on my channel, you can prove it on your own. All right. So, yeah, I got to see the receipts. Yeah, you can't just tell me something 6,000 years old. All the temples, all the Syrian, almost every pyramid and temple structure has changed their alignment over time, and it's inexplicable unless something in the sky drastically changed. Yeah, it's crazy. Well, we got a lot to cover today. I don't have very many announcements. Not for a day like today. I don't really have any announcements today. I just want to get off into this. This is an excellent share video. This is a video where you're going to be able to share because we're going to touch on all the Archaix concepts. That's what we're going to do. Jamie Robbins, I can prove I'm sexy. Dude, I don't think your suspenders wearing ass will ever qualify for that. You forget, I've met you 5 times now, man. All right. So we have a new link index. We have an entirely new link index, a whole bunch of contact emails for all different departments in Archaix. Yeah, check it out. PDFs that we forgot, downloads. We've corrected the links in the description box right now. Also on X, also on Facebook. I do believe I posted it I might not have posted in community. I don't remember. I did post the Vegas meetup because we are going to have a fun time in Vegas. It's going to be a pattern break because we're going to be talking about God's sense of humor. We're going to talk about the underlying core amusement programming that runs through the entire structure, because it is here. It is here. And you can resonate with it. You can tap into that field, and amazing things will happen to you when you become an amused observer of this clown show. I mean, it's a circus. It is a circus, and we all take turns being the clown. But it's part of the programming of the field. And when you can tap into it and be that observer and enjoy the show for what it is, things change for you. Yeah, it's crazy. So the theme of this show right here, know your history and you will know your world. It is very simple. Know your history, know your world. That's it. It's just like an old adage. Change your attitude, change your world. Same thing here. Know your history. That's the theme for this right here. And somebody did bring, I didn't get much information. I did not get much information about this ad, but Peter Anoa of Steady Stride Designs. He designs t-shirts. He wants to design some Archaix related t-shirts. He has his own link tree he has provided us, and it's in the description box right now. You can go ahead and check it out. But Peter Anoa is the one that is sponsoring this very unique video where we're going to go through everything Archaix in one presentation. Let's check it. Let's check out what Peter Anoa is talking about. Man, we're going to have to play that again at the end of this video. We're going to have to play that again a couple times at the end of this video, toward the end of this video. Did somebody say it was glitching? We're going to play it some more. Yeah, he didn't provide much info at all, but he did provide a link tree that goes into a whole bunch of his creations. That's a lot of info. Yeah. All right. Wow, what is it with these little ads? What is it with these ads? My videos hardly never mess up until I play an ad. What the hell? So I guess if it's not a YouTube approved ad, they're going to glitch me? There's a conspiracy coming out of me again. All right, so yeah, we'll play it again a couple more times. All right, probably is a bad connection. Yeah, I got connection is unstable. I do have connection is unstable. We're going to check that out. One never knows. I can't do anything about that. Got a full battery, though. All right. Yeah, it's always something, guys. It's always something. So thank you, Peter and Noah. And y'all check out in the description box the link tree. Get my tea and my coffee ready. All right. All right, let's see here. Yeah, we got the Vegas meetup coming. We got the Vegas meetup site. Somebody please, one of my moderators, post the link for that, because we got that. Let's remove the studio. I'm gonna remove that from studio. Oh, cool. My bandwidth is back. I don't know what was going on, but my bandwidth is back. Who knows? It could be somebody out there in Langley pointing the antenna at me. You never know. Shut that dude Jason up for a little while. Put him in his place. So you got to know your history to know your world. We got to separate the real from the imagined. And in separating the real from the imagined, it's a very painful process. It's not just painful for the person whose paradigm is being shattered. It's also painful for the iconoclast. For those of you who don't know, iconoclast is based off Latin words that means an idol smasher. Idols are things that people put on pedestals. So ideas, concepts, beliefs, faiths, these are things that people hold to be true, and this is what they're trained to believe is actually the truth. So until they come into contact with information that shows that what they have believed to be true is actually false, it can be a very painful process removing oneself from that paradigm, because every single belief system that we maintain is not a singularity. They are all enmeshed with other belief systems. We are creatures of pattern recognition. And being such, when we accept something to be true as best we can, we try to integrate it with other things that we have also accepted to be true. So this is why separating the real from the imagined is a painful process. One, it gets me hated. I got people all over the world that hate my guts. They don't want to know the truth. They love those fantasies. We're going to mention them here in this video, but there's a whole lot of things that we have covered. In the 4.5 years of the life of Archaix, since I left just the literary publishing world and entered into the digital universe, discovered a lot of things. I have personally traveled to some of the places that I have studied. In Archaix, we have learned that meteor craters are probably not from rocks falling from space, but from subterranean pressure that builds and explodes forth calderas, often when those areas of the world are underwater. Meteor crater in Arizona is in a desert, but it looks like the bottom of an ocean bed. It's no different than Jimmy Corsetti got famous for his theory about the Archaix structure. It wasn't his theory originally, but he's the one that got it popular because he had the biggest mouth at the time. Jimmy Corsetti got real famous behind claiming that a salt dome of concentric rings of outward pressure that had blown out when the Sahara was underwater. Any geologist knows what a salt dome is and knows how they're created. It's just a unique structure, the Archaix structure, because it's above sea level. But we all know the Sahara used to be underwater. Not only do geologists tell us it used to be the ocean bed, but even in the traditional records of Strabo and Diodorus, we know the whole area used to be the Triton Sea. So it's not even in the location of Atlantis. So these are things that we have gone through in Archaix, and we know that these meteor craters that have been found around the world, they're not from rocks falling from space. Because of the 23.5 degree obliquity of our world and the fact that our world is supposedly turning on an axis, and because everything must enter multiple layers of the atmosphere at an angle of declination, there's no way that perfectly round bowls are the result of rocks from space. But they can be from caldera and subterranean underwater explosions. The release pressure valves. So this changes a lot. It changes a lot. But in Archaix, every single data point, in order to create our world view, which is a data set, has to fit. Those big old meteor craters everywhere, they're not. They're caldera. They were once underwater. That's why they're all located in deserts. So those are former ocean beds. Well, most of them are in deserts. Some of them have been reforested over time. It changes what Tunguska was in 1908. I have a video about that. I got a video about meteor crater, Arizona. Also about 1908, Tunguska, we're told that it was a meteorite, but that's what we're told to believe. That's not what it actually was. How do we know? Because the historical record has historical accounts, and that we can read what people saw in 1908 and 1909, and we don't have to rely on uniformitarian theorists who believe in all kinds of impossible scientific mumbo jumbo in 1970, 1980, and 1990, writing books and telling us that the Tunguska event flattened 55 square miles of timber and forest in secluded Siberia when it detonated in the air, and it was just a bolide, a meteorite. This is what the scientific establishment wants to tell you because they always go with the uniformitarian model. But the truth of the Tunguska deal was that local witnesses in Russia watched it change its direction twice. As it descended in altitude, it changed direction twice and then looked like it was actively looking for the most secluded area in all that region to detonate, and it blew up. That was something acting with intelligence. So, with the Reichstag, real popular in alt media right now, the Reichstag structure, equally popular and equally ridiculous is the 8,000 to 10,000 BC dating of Göbekli Tepe. I've got 3 different videos on Göbekli Tepe, and what I show, it's no different than the ancient baths in the kivas of the old world, and that it's probably post-Diluvian, sometime in the 21st, 20th, and 19th century BC, and that its animal motifs and effigies are parallel with the bird cult and the Anuna Sumerian Akkadian handbag period. There's nothing old about Göbekli Tepe. Just because it was buried doesn't mean it's old. There are areas from the Madrid quakes in the Mississippi Valley that are buried under 40 to 60 foot of mud and dirt and landslides. It does not mean they're 50,000 years old. This is uniformitarian thinking. Göbekli Tepe was buried not by the people. That's a stupid theory. It was buried in a cataclysm. It was a reset. So, for those who are new to my channel, you don't know, I have videos that go into detail about Göbekli Tepe art, where that same art is found everywhere else in the world, and how even archaeologists and scientists agree that where it's found everywhere else in the world is just 4,000 years old. However, at Göbekli Tepe, because they're trying to promote an Ice Age type narrative, all of a sudden, all the architectural features, the Kiva style cylindrical chambers, and the animal effigies that are found all over the world, just like Göbekli Tepe, like on Easter Island, are all of a sudden 10,000 years old. It's ridiculous. So in Archaix, we dismantle that entire paradigm and put it in its proper perspective. So I understand if newcomers to my channel will say, but oh, Jason, you don't understand. They've already proven, Graham Hancock's proven Atlantis is 9,600 BC. And my Archaix veterans are going to, in the comment section, defend that. And they're going to say, no, man, you don't understand. Graham Hancock doesn't want none of Jason of Archaix. He's been publicly called out numerous times to debate his Atlantis dating. And he's not coming to the table. So, as a matter of fact, Graham Hancock told a person, never going to debate me because I'm not going to talk to somebody who can't pronounce words correctly. Cool. Cool. That doesn't matter. I don't fear a sociologist when it comes to historical matters. I don't believe he's qualified. I believe his books are garbage, and I have them on the shelves and I've showed them. His bibliographies actually have the right information in them, but he doesn't cite that. He cites the fantasy based off a misunderstanding of the ancient Egyptian moon count system. So there is an overwhelming amount of information that I have shown all throughout my research and on my channel that the Egyptians did not trust the sun, because the sun had moved and changed its location 4 times in Egyptian recorded history, and they would not adopt any system that relied on the sun as a timekeeping system, but they did rely on the moon. And every 30 days, to the Egyptian priests of Sais, where Solon got the information about Atlantis. Every 30 days was deemed an Egyptian year. And in the days of Plato, this was known. In Greek scholarship that I cite, and that Graham Hancock won't even read, all say that the Egyptians reckoned a 30-day period as a year, which totally makes sense because now Atlantis becomes the 13th century BC, right where another school of scholarship put the invasion of the sea people. Who are sea people? They came from the Atlantic Ocean. What is the Atlantic? It is the origin of Atlantis. It all makes perfect sense. Who wrote about the Sea People's Federation? Everybody Plato mentioned in the dialogues of Timaeus and Critias, whatever their names are. Don't get me wrong. Don't give me the line. That's why Graham Hancock won't talk to me. Can't pronounce them. So these are things we have covered extensively in Archaix, and not just covered them, but even called out those who have put themselves in positions of authority to debate. Yeah, Jimmy Corsetti, Billy Carson, Matt LaCroix. There's a whole host of them. Graham Hancock. I even Randall Carlson publicly. I've sent emails to all these men, and I keep the emails. I've even posted the emails for you guys to read. So you know I'm not BSing you. They're not going to come to the table because they know they're promoting fantasy. So in Archaix, we are pulling these paradigms apart because it shows us what's left behind. It's the point is not to dismantle people in some egoic campaign in order to show that, hey, we're better and you suck. This is how it's perceived. Why? Because dismantling paradigms is a very painful process. But in today's time period, we've got less than 15 years before all hell breaks loose. We've got 15.2 years until the Phoenix reset in May of 2040. It's too late to be polite. It's too late to give a damn about anybody's opinions now. In 6 and 7 years from now, I'm going to be able to look back with pride with a community that's strong, that's going to be saying, yeah, man, Jason told us. Jason was right on the money once you start seeing that all these rich people, billionaires, corporations and all that, it's going to, within 7 or 8 years, it's going to be very, very obvious that they're all planning to go underground. Very obvious. I've been saying this for 4 years on my channel. My very first YouTube video ever was about the elite building underground bunkers because of the coming of the Phoenix. And it was the first time any of you have ever heard of the Phoenix phenomenon. I haven't stopped since. All I've done was add to it. And that was after 3 published books about the Phoenix phenomenon. Nothing's changed in Archaix. Don't have to. Once we had the chronology down and easy to defend, then everything else just falls into place. Like Franz Boas, 1888 says, record enough facts and the truth will fall like ripe fruit. So Atlantis was real, but it was 13th century BC. How do we know? Because Plato said they were at war with Athens. How in the hell can Graham Hancock look you in the eye and not smile and smirk when he's telling you that Atlantis was 9,600 BC during the Younger Dryas period? As a matter of fact, it was right after Meltwater Pulse 1b. Man, be quiet. We'll hear that uniformitarian BS. Don't get me wired up on Graham Hancock. Yeah, because I'm going to tell you now, all he's going to do is get mad because I can't pronounce words right. But it's just as equally ludicrous as the ancient aliens paradigm. All these main points that ancient aliens have, I have gone through systematically and shown you guys videos where every bit of this whole system and series of things that they find as factual have other interpretations. But they always leap to ancient aliens. Oh, it's got to be ancient aliens. It's ancient aliens. It's gotten ridiculous. It's gotten really ridiculous. So, yeah, some of my heroes have even fallen, like David Hatcher Childress. I've read every single one of his books. I admire his erudition and the fact that he kept it clean. He didn't push ancient aliens when he was publishing all these amazing books, especially the Lost City series. But then, like so many others, he took the money. He took the money and he ran with the narrative. And now what does he do? He promotes ancient aliens. So who is he? Who is he to me now? Pretty much a fraud. Simple as that. The Anunnaki narrative, ancient aliens. This is Billy Carson's big money maker here. You know, basically, Billy Carson's not a researcher. He's a borrower. He watches 10 YouTube videos and then does his own video and claims all the information is from his research. It's so pedantic and kindergartenish, the way this guy puts together his theses. It's just crazy. However, he's right. The Anunnaki did exist, but they were just bearded humans. Yeah. All this AI-generated artwork showing drop ships, shuttles, battle frigates, and all these things, none of this is in the historical record. Not even Sumerian writings mention anything like this. The very closest approximation to such a scenario doesn't even come from the Middle East. It comes from ancient India in the stories of the Vimanas. And they could have been Zeppelins that were, we don't know what they were, but they were some type of aerial aircraft, but nothing like what Zecharia Sitchin and with his misinterpretation of the Shim being a rocket ship, totally ridiculous. It's why not one single accredited scholar would back Zecharia Sitchin. It's why Samuel Noah Kramer and Marine Gallery Kovacs Sumerologists would not endorse Zecharia Sitchin in his Sumerian translations. It was all embellishment. So the Anunnaki were just bearded humans, and this makes sense of Hesiod's Theogony and the Annals of Sanchoniathon of Phoenicia, 1000 BC. And we hear about the races of the Titans. We hear about the races of the Titans, and then later the gods or the Olympians, and sometimes the giants. And every bit of it makes sense when you put it into its proper context, that we are dealing with post-reset narratives. We are dealing with ex post facto histories written by civilizations that have lost their infrastructures. So they remember things, and the frames of reference they have are pretty technological, but they're conveying things from a mythological standpoint because it's centuries later. They're remembering the stories they heard when they were children that their grandparents told them, and their grandparents heard it from their mothers and fathers of the world before the cataclysm, but they didn't live in that world. So the ones that survived the cataclysm were titanic. They were titans, and they were taller. And for some reason, the ecosphere had completely changed. And now the titanic grandparents only gave birth to gigantic moms and dads. Something had changed fundamentally. And in the third generation, the grandchildren were just normal humans. This is also the story of Greek mythology. So every bit of this makes sense. Not in ancient aliens parlance, but in the fact that our world has gone through a series of resets and cataclysms, and it's always the survivors who get to tell the tale as to what happened to the world of their fathers. Anunnaki were just bearded humans. This is exactly what we find with the Chinese dragon kings. I have many video presentations where I talk about that. Chinese chronologists and tradition and scholars have dated the Dragon King dynasty of China to be exactly 25th to 21st century BC, where it's 646 years of a dynasty of dragon kings in China that mirror perfectly the 241,200 Shar dynasty of the 8 kings of Sumer. 241,200 turnings of the stars, Shars, is only 670 years. The 670 years of the Sumerian dynasty is paralleling the 646 years of the Dragon King dynasty. And why are they called dragons? Dragon kings? Well, every Chinese scholar will tell you. Because to be the dragon kings referred to the fact that they were dragon-faced. When you find out what dragon-faced means, it means to the ancient Chinese who were beardless, you were dragon-faced if you were able to grow a beard. The Anunnaki were bearded, tall, horned helmet humans that imposed their own culture and technology on a more primitive people. The story of the Anunnaki is no different than the story of the Dragon Kings. It's the same story. And every bit of this all these calendars and all these chronologies make sense because in Archaix we set the record straight on ancient timekeeping systems. Today I'm exactly 18,900 shars old. I was born June 9th, 1973. I'm 18,900 shars old. Turnings of the stars. Stars are how the ancients counted time. They could not trust the sun. So the Sumerian system I've already proven in the Archaix research, and I have hundreds, maybe even thousands of people that absolutely agree with my conclusions because it makes everything in the historical record fit. If you want to listen to Billy Carson, then you're going to have to believe that in 432,000 years, the gods Enki and the Anunnaki appeared, and they built Bad Tabira, Larak, Shurapak, and these cities lasted almost 500,000 years, and that during that time, for 241,200 years. You have any idea how long that is? 250,000 years. 7 kings ruled in Sumer. You have to suspend your disbelief to believe all this, to believe that a on a throne for 48,000 years by himself. But in Archaix, you don't have to believe any of that because it's just fantasy. It's just a misinterpretation. When you go by the ancient scholarship, and as my Archaix veterans know, I have many videos where I cite all the historians that tell us the ancient Sumerian and Babylonian count systems were a day for a year. It was because of a misunderstanding. Same way Atlantis got misdated. When we correct the Shar and the Egyptian Sais lunar calendar to their proper perspectives, Atlantis is the 13th century BC, and all the Sumerian dates fit in between 3000 and 1800 BC, exactly where they need to fit. Every one of them. In 241,200 years of Billy Carson just becomes 670 years when 8 kings ruled. It's very simple. Very simple. So the reason we know more evidence that these were day count systems is the fact that we know that the Vedic system borrowed the exact same numbers: 216,000, 432,000, 864,000, 1,728,000. But these aren't years. These great yugas and Maya yugas, they're just days. And when you factor them as days, they fit perfectly within the Sumerian Akkadian histories. Perfectly. Absolute proof there were day count system is that the Mayan long count is just as old as the Sumerian and the Vedic systems. Its start date is 3113 BC. That's 31 centuries BC. That is 5,000, almost 5,150 years ago. And it's a day count system. They just factored days, 1,872,000 days divided by 13 Mayan epics. Each Mayan epic was 144,000 days. I didn't have to make that up. That's what Mayan scholarship, that's what Mesoamerican scholars have published. So these are day count systems, and it changes everything. It means at 51 years old, I'll be 52 in a couple more months. I am 18,900 shars old today. So in going through all these old records and correcting all these things, we come to find out that one of the most prominent, among the most prominent constellations and star in the pre-Aries to Pisces zodiac stellosphere was Sirius. The ancients were fascinated with Sirius. Sirius is the dog star. Sirius is also connected to Canis Major and Canis Minor, the little dog and the great dog constellations. So In this research, in this Archaix research studying the Giza Plateau, we find these traditions and we find this evidence that the Sphinx was never a lion, and the Sphinx never had the face of a man, and that in looking at the Sphinx and measuring the width of its neck, we find out that the headdress and the face that are on there today fit within the actual measurements of a canine neck where the head has been broken off in a cataclysm. And we learned that the Sphinx was underwater for a long period of time, 340 years, and that same water heavily damaged the exterior of the Great Pyramids. In Archaix, we have come to find out why Egypt was called the raised land, and how the Great Flood wasn't a great flood of the entire world. It was a great flood of the entire Indo-Iranian Aryan races, and they lived in massive series of beautiful timber-filled freshwater valleys and lakes that is presently Middle Earth, the Mediterranean Sea, before it was a Mediterranean Sea, and how the Strait of Gibraltar, called the Pillars of Hercules, had shaken and broke forth, and the tsunami of the Atlantic came in and drowned 200 cities. And the survivors went into Thracia, in Turkey, Armenia, the Middle East, up in Judea, Palestine, northern Egypt, and they built their empires, the ancient world that we know today. This is the archaic model. This is what happened in the ancient world. This is what is shown in the Archaix presentations. The Sphinx was a great dog. It was the guardian of the gate of the underworld, which is the Great Pyramid, which guards the kingdom of Seker, the underworld of ancient Egypt, which hides the gate of Rostal, where the dead will find a way out of the construct. So we've had to undo, and yeah, it seems like I'm on the attack, and I guess in a way I am. But we've had to single out people who are promoting the most filth. Billy Carson, Forbidden Knowledge News. We can almost take every single thing promoted in Forbidden Knowledge and just cast it aside. It's misinformation. And it has to be deliberate, because these things can't be that unknown. And especially when free data sets were given to the public in the form of PDFs. I know, because thousands of you downloaded my PDFs, and they're still available today. Whole data sets on the SHAR, correcting the SHAR system. Billy Carson has seen those data sets. He's not dumb. You don't think he's downloaded all this free data that I've been providing the public, showing that Atlantis is in 9,600 BC, showing that, there's no way in hell this man didn't look at that, and yet still gets on Forbidden Knowledge and promotes the BS. Just like Jimmy Corsetti still gets on these pretended alt media, but they're really mainstream, and still promotes this Archaix structure as being anything other than a series of salt domes. Emerald tablets of Thoth in Archaix, we have shown absolutely, written in 1922 by an author named Dorial, totally fake, and Billy Carson tried to pass them off as historical. They're not. The Emerald tablets of Thoth are a fantasy, and a recent one. The Emerald tablet is a small little page out of a book from like 700 years ago, and there's nothing to it. That little page in that book isn't even connected to the Emerald tablets of Thoth that Billy Carson promotes. So I've made a lot of enemies in Gaia, but it's of necessity. I mean, Gaia is not about promoting truth. You know that. It's entertainment. There's nobody here's fooled by that anymore. I don't think. Maybe you are. I don't know. Maybe you are. Man, it's really raining out there. Real. I got my whole system goes into a backup. I got like a 12-hour backup generator. Wow. Yeah, it's coming down. Animals are outside pairing it up. So yeah, it's just today Gaia has pretty much dissolved into some Facebook educated feel good crap. It's just crap. Every time I come into contact with a Gaia production, I'm like, man, it just, my whole soul vibrates at a different frequency. Like, what am I doing, man? Damn, if I had a third leg, I'd kick myself in the ass. Just won't do it. So the field is packed full of Dunning-Krugers and barf parrots. I've got a video about it. You know what I'm talking about, especially my Archaix veterans. You know what I'm talking about. The Dunning-Krugers of the world would never be able to espouse so much trash and garbage in the field if it wasn't for the barf parrots, because it's the barf parrots that give them these platforms and give them this ability to go off and just talk about all this garbage. Yeah, man, barf parrots and Dunning-Krugers. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look it up. Another thing that I'm very critical of is anyone, especially Graham Hancock and anybody, Randall Carlson, anyone who wants to debate the topic, man, they're more than welcome to debate it with me. The Great Flood of Noah, of biblical fame, being promoted as the younger, driest ice age period is total malarkey. It's total BS. And if you think that you can prove that the great flood of the historical record of all these myths and traditions, the great flood of the book of Genesis, the great flood of Noah, the day the sky fell, the collapse of the vapor canopy, if you think that you can prove that that date is actually an ice age just because you can cite 3 or 4 Golden Dawn era publications in the 1800s where they were saying that the great flood must have been 10,000 BC, you're welcome to my channel, and I will embarrass you. I will overwhelm you with data. It's just stupid. It's dumb. It's so easy to show from multiple different disciplines and from multiple different mathematical vantage points and citing multiple different texts and traditions from the ancient world and modern day scientific reports. It is so easy to show that the Great Flood happened about 2240 BC. Exactly 2239 BC in the month of May. So this is another thing in our case. We have an overwhelming amount of data for the Great Flood. And why is that important? I can understand an outsider looking in and saying, man, I hate that dude Jason of Archaix. Can't stand that dude. Thinks he knows everything. But I'm willing to take the public beating. I've been taking a public beating since I started my channel. I'm willing to take a public beating just so the few souls that need to can see the data and like, wow, because they're the ones that are going to understand. If the Great Flood event is true and we can prove it by all this data, wait a minute, that story's connected to this story and this story. Wait a minute, how far does this go? Yeah, that's why it's very critical to understand what can be shown as fact and what is just purely fantasy. That's why. So, guys, I'm highly critical of like Galactic Federation. Listen, I know some of you really like some of these guys that put out stuff on the Great Pyramid. They seem to be very educated. So I heard a rumor one of them might be a multi-millionaire and he's on YouTube producing videos. And I don't care about none of that. None of that. Any individual who promotes Galactic Federation shit is probably a fed themselves. There's no way in hell I'm going to listen to you tell me anything about the Giza Plateau. Tell me anything about calendrics, anything about mathematics period, anything about traditions, history, geology, and at the same time, you're also promoting Galactic Federation? Yeah, like you got a ham radio in your garage and you're talking to Pleiadians? Shut the F up. Galactic Federation is Facebook-educated adult fantasy. And it's the worst. It's the lowest of the low. Anybody promoting that is a fraud, an absolute fraud. Galactic Federation, y'all wait, y'all hold up. Y'all just hold up. Those drop ships are coming. We're on the other side of the moon. We're just waiting. We're waiting for the human race to come up and vibrate to the right level. Once you've collectively vibrated to the right level, we're going to bring our ships in. You're going to do what? Pass out cigars? Congratulate us? Man, get off YouTube. You guys are morons, absolute morons. And I'm more disgusted not with the people who promote Galactic Federation. I'm more disgusted with you people who listen to that drivel. Stupid. So dumb. Yeah, if you're promoting Galactic Federation, yeah. You fact checkers out there, you need to look those people up, because I promise you, in some way they're connected to real feds. Galactic Federation. Man, I may as well watch G.I. Joe. So yeah, other things that we've had to take we've had to take things into consideration that just don't make sense, but they don't make sense from a uniformitarian perspective. So one of the things I can forgive Graham Hancock on is the fact that he keeps his model within uniformitarian perimeters. I can respect that. That's how he was educated. Does he believe it? I doubt it. But what I mean by uniformitarian perimeters is that Ice Age theory is just that. There's 59 different Ice Age theories. There isn't one because it's never been proven. That's why Ice Age is a theory. The problem with Ice Age, though, is also addressed by Graham Hancock. So we have a man here, a sociologist, who broke into alt media with fingerprints of the gods, who is now educating us on the fact that Atlantis is probably 9,600 BC, and that the Great Flood was probably in 10,000 or so BC. And we have this evidence through Meltwater Pulse 1b, whatever the hell that means, ask uniformitarian. And then we have this grand theory of Ice Age melting, now Great Flood, probably comet impact, Civilization X, technologically advanced civilization in the Ice Age. It's all destroyed. Graham Hancock will tell you all that, and at the same time tell you evidence of this is in the fact that we have maps showing an ice-free Antarctica from the 15 and 1600s. Man, that sounds amazing. And it's the connection, the intellectual chain of custody of thoughts going from Ice Age times through history all the way to the presence of maps by the Turkish navigators that showed an ice-free Antarctica cannot possibly exist. So Graham Hancock wants you to believe that these maps are copies of copies of copies of copies of copies of copies going all the way back to the Younger Dryas period, when all these other theories, Great Flood in the Ice Age is a theory, Atlantis in the Ice Age is a theory, easily disproven, both of them. The Ice Age itself is theoretical. So we have to, if we're going to follow Graham Hancock, we have to be real about that. We have to accept the fact that we're going to add a theory plus a theory plus a theory to conclude a fact. I'm not willing to do that. I'm especially not willing to do that over an expansive time that he's talking about of over 10,000 plus years. I'm not willing to do that. And I think if you're willing to do that, you probably shouldn't be listening to Archaix at all. You need to go. So I'm thinking that these maps exist. Graham Hancock is not lying. The Turkish navigator maps exist, and there's like 4 of them that show ice-free Antarctica in places that are covered in 2-mile ice caps today, Arctic and Antarctic, that do not have ice on the maps. On the maps, it shows the coastlines, the rivers, the deltas, the mountains, and they've been compared with subsurface interface radar, what's below the 2-mile ice caps, and it's been confirmed the maps are accurate. So Graham Hancock's not lying, the maps exist. The problem is what they mean to us today. You're not going to have maps. It's like Chinese whisper game. You got 30 people in a circle. Whisper something. It's got to be over 10 words. Whisper something. It's going to be a whisper to the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. The 29th is going to whisper it to the 30th. The 30th person's going to whisper it back to the 1st, and it's not going to say anything like the original whisper. People process what they hear differently, and they relay it differently, and they don't think they've done anything different. Happens all the time. When it comes to these Ice Age maps, we have a problem because these maps, Anytime you have in the realm of cartography, if you have a map, then your window of opportunity is maybe 200 years, maybe 200 years that map survived into common use. Yeah, that's extremely rare. So what we're looking at is a period when there was no ice caps on Antarctica, somewhere around the 11, 12, or 1300s. That's real recent. The uniformitarian model cannot account for that, but Archaix can. We'll talk about vapor canopies in a minute. So in Archaix, we have shown that we've made sense out of a lot of things by understanding the patriarchal takeover. It puts myths, traditions, legends, ancient laws and statutes, law codes into their proper perspective. It also puts things into perspective like pantheons and gods and why their consorts were where they were. How male divinities showed up later, long after matriarchal goddess worshipping cultures and civilizations existed that knew no male gods. But then male gods were everywhere. Why? Because of a cataclysm. What happened in the cataclysm? Violence. What happened? Why was the violence there? Because social structure had collapsed. But the people still venerated female authority. So what happened? The dictators, the warrior caste, they had to adopt the priestesses as their wives. Pantheons of gods, each male god had to be given a female consort. This was imposed by the people, or the priesthoods would have never been able to rule over them. That's how powerful the ancient goddess worshiping civilizations were. Even after the cataclysm, they still had to be recognized, or the people would revolt. So in Archaix, we have put back the original pre-flood goddess religion is back together as much as we can. We're not done. It never ends. We're always researching. We're always pulling out more information. Yeah, with Archaix, there's never an end to the research. It's a continuum. This is just where we are today at 18,900 shars alive. That's where we are. 51.74 years. That's how old I am. So also, this ancient matriarchal veneration, it had to be used during the Dodona, the Delphic oracles. In Archaix, you will find videos where I explain that the Delphic oracle, the oracle of Dodoni, Didymi, those are three of the most ancient oracles, but there were others. They were intelligence agencies. I even explained how they operated and how they did what they did, but they fooled the people. But in order to fool them perfectly, they had to tap into that old goddess nature. How did they do that? Because it was all staging. When people finally went in to talk to the oracle, it was a female, and she was entheogens or drugged up in some way, some half naked in a gown or whatever, and she would speak a language they didn't even understand. It was all very mystical to them, and it looked like scribes on the side were writing down and translating everything she said, but it's not. By the time the person was invited to come in and get the prophecy of the Sibyl, intelligence had already come from afar to answer the man's question. This is how they operated. When you saw the stewards of the oracle, you never saw the actual priestesses until the day you were called in for your little stage show, which was very compelling to the person that watched it. It looked very believable, but it was all Hollywood stage. Behind the scenes, what most people don't know, but this is mentioned, like in the writings of Anaximander and Plutarch, they talk about this. You didn't get your answer from the oracle sometimes till weeks or months later. You were forced to camp out. How bad did you want your oracle? Your answer from the oracle. Kings and rulers and governors and military leaders, they would send their delegations to the oracle with food and provisions so they would camp out there. They would camp for weeks or months, and behind the scenes, by ship, the information would come. And these oracles were intelligence gathering centers, and they would come back and they would give the best information you would interpret the way they want you to interpret it, but you were giving it to a woman who spoke a foreign language, who was voluptuous and beautiful. Her eyes were rolling back in her head. She was obviously in a frenzy or in some type of divine deal, drug induced. And you smelling, it was like a casino. You go in there, you smell the smells, you hear the sounds, you see all the electronics. All it was sensory overload and a bunch of staging. When people were writing down, they weren't writing down a damn thing she said. But when you were finally given a copy of the oracle, you were given actual intelligence that had come from somewhere else. And often it took weeks or months. So these psyops, they're nothing new. The Sibyls were borrowing from the old matriarchal power. It's how they pulled it off. So in Archaix, we've had to disentangle a lot of fiction from things that are factual. And like I said, it's a painful process. We can be called racist. We can be called all kinds of things, such as the Great Wall of China. It was my personal discovery. And I brought it to Martin Leakey's attention and asked him, hey man, what do you think about this? This is kind of bizarre. But here's the measurements on the top of the Great Wall. It's uniform all the way down the wall. Look at this. The uniform width of a Roman road is 16 feet. How's this possible? So me and Martin started looking at it and we said, well, what's a Roman mile? We measured a Roman mile. So wait a minute. All these towers on the Great Wall of China are a Roman mile apart? So we started looking into the Roman architecture. It was like, wow. You've seen the two videos. We've done two different videos now on the Great Wall of Rome. The Silk Road was Roman engineering. It was built with Chinese labor. Hard fact, but it's the truth. Max Egan even took it to another level because I theorized that if this truly is the ancient Amazon of the old world and that products were being moved by backpack, 50 men, a Roman cohort, 50 men with one team leader, all of them wearing backpacks and one little stomach pack. And all they have to do is go a few miles and then pass off the backpacks to a team that's waiting, and that team keeps on going, and the merchandise never stops. Teams of men China's always had a lot of people. Teams of men are always on standby to take their turn. The actual product never stops. In just a week, backpacks in the thousands, full of spices, full of all kinds of jade, full of all kinds of Chinese products, could be in the marketplaces of Rome in just weeks. And I suspected, if this is true, if this model that Martin Leakey and I, put together is true, then that means the end of the wall must have been an ancient docking, a port. But I didn't have the evidence to prove it, and I didn't even look. I should have looked, but I didn't. You know who did? Max Egan. And he did a whole video on BitChute and blew people's minds when he gave us a shout out, but he showed using aerial Google Maps, and he blew the area up and showed all the ancient Roman wharfs, quays, and all the old docks, and even buildings that are all underwater in the Yellow Sea at the end of the Great Wall. These are things that we've uncovered in Archaix, that our world is not what you think, and the historical record is not accurate at all. At all. It's very painful to admit, in so many different data sets from so many different perspectives, it is very painful. It was painful for me, but it's very painful to admit that the beautiful Jesus story, the gospel, was a literary masterpiece, and not an ounce of it was historical. Christianity today, believing in something that never happened, that the historians of the day even argued against, that over it took 400 years to take a a literary masterpiece and turn it into historical narrative. It took 4 years. They had to wait till everybody died. Then they had to wait for everybody to die who knew from the people who were alive at the time. Then they had to wait for that generation to die. It took over 400 years of church councils and revising and editing gospel narratives to finally get the church to agree that this was a historical story. 400 years. And still, all the way up until the 1200s, the Roman Catholic Church had problems with so many Christian groups, Gnostic groups, that knew the story was literary from the beginning. The Waldenses and the Cathars. Finally, the Roman Catholic Church, they had to just go ahead and use one of the crusades against them, and they genocided those people simply because they knew Jesus was a story, not a fact. So this is in the 1200s that happened. So it's painful. And now today, every element of Christianity qualifies as a cult. I've done a video too showing here are all the main factors of cults. And here's how modern Christianity fit to a T, every single one of them. I've got other videos where I explain apologetics. I've even called Wes Huff out publicly to a debate. I've sent the man personal emails. I have messaged him on his threads, in the comment sections of his videos. I've told other podcasters that, hey, if you can get Wes Huff to do it, man, I will debate him on anything Christian, anything. Wes Huff has been running. Within a week of me campaigning, trying to get Wes Huff to debate this issue, he does a video explaining why he's not going to debate anybody on this Christian stuff because he needs time to prepare for debate. It's just ridiculous. What do you need time to prepare for? You should know your material. You are supposed to be an expert in apologetics. But to me, I understand what it is. Apologetics is nothing but the damage control of the church. It is a special field of academia where other scholars don't really appreciate them at all because they're not Christians. But it's a special field of academia that focuses only on defending the integrity of the Christian story. Apologetics derives from the fact that all the original church fathers and church writers were all heavily defensive against all the scholars of the day. Unlike any other religion that has ever started in this world, Christianity began in doubt. And the people that doubted it were everybody alive. It took 400 years to turn it into a historical story instead of a literary masterpiece. So, in going through this, like I said, every piece of data, every paradigm collapsed in the Archaix model is a link in a chain, and it goes into the next. So the collapse of the Christian narrative with so much data automatically forces us to look at the Turin Shroud. What did we find with the Turin Shroud? Oh my God. I never would have imagined to find all that out, especially not watching all these YouTube videos about the Turin Shroud. So I didn't get any of my information from a single YouTube video because they're all bullshit. I did a video on the Turin Shroud where I showed you guys the business. This doesn't date to the time of Jesus at all. Every 100% of all the data connected to the Turin Shroud literally screams at you that this is a Norman knight who was killed in the Middle East in one of the Crusades, and his Norman brethren took the shroud back to France where it was found. So this is why divulging all this information is painful. Do you guys even understand behind the scenes what I've had to deal with going through? Who cares that some podcasters and try to get extra views on their channel exposing my criminal history? Yeah, I effed up when I was 17 years old. Who cares? That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the personal friendships that I've cultured over the years, and then come to find out one of my videos triggers somebody so bad that severed all ties. And I wonder, wow, man, were we ever really friends? Did I mistake that? How many times I've been right on the cusp of having someone real big want to come in and say, hey, Jason, you're doing something I've never seen no one do before. I cannot believe that You worked manual labor for years when you got out of prison just so you could do videos on YouTube every night and got 300 videos done before you had 1,000 subs. And now you've grown this amazing critical thinking community to the point where other researchers are even worried that you'll call them out. It's amazing. I get so close and I talk and I engage in contact, and then I'll release a video because I have no filters, and I release a video because I'm always chasing the truth, and the person that I'm talking to gets offended. And then all that hope of getting that type of backing and funding is gone. You have any idea how many personal setbacks I have received in building this community? Yeah, you guys don't have a clue. In my personal life, I have been under assault from day one building Archaix. I still forge forward. I don't even care. I do not care about all the flack I take. But I just need you to know that I'm taking it. I'm taking it on a weekly basis. And sometimes it comes from directions I would have never anticipated before, ever. But that's why divulging accurate information is a very painful process. It's not just painful for the people that hear correct information and then have to rearrange their paradigms. They got to rearrange everything else, because once you accepted something to be true, everything else has to fit somewhere. And this is what we naturally do. But when something really critical and foundational is undermined and you hear it, it triggers you. And you want to say things like Micah Dank did. Oh, I can prove the Zodiac is 6,000 years old. I'm telling you, Micah Dank cannot. But I sure hope he does that video so I can go through it. When we hear things that are foundational that get overturned and we realize, damn, this sucks, then it affects many other avenues of our life. And we're left with a choice. Do I go ahead and now explore these other adjacent topics that I only accepted because I thought this was true? Or do I just go ahead and unsub from Archaix and go watch other YouTube videos and hope I forget that this shit just came into my field? Because that's what a lot of people do. It is so astonishing to me that in this journey of divulging information that I have found from these old books, that I find the lie is the truth. How many times have I told you guys that the lie, it shocks me, man. The lie is this photo negative of a real reality where everything opposite is actually real. And the lie becomes the truth. I'm told all my life, here's the Christian story, it's all real. Here's everything you need to know. Here's the Bible, here's the Apocrypha, here's the pseudepigraphical text, here's everything you need, extra canonical text, here's everything you need to know. This is what you learn, Jason. This is what's real. So I learned these things. Here's the scientific material, here's all this. And it just shocks me to find out more and more and more, every bit of that is the lie, created to control all outcomes in my cerebral behavior. But the lie becomes the truth when I look at all the literature that I was told is occultic, alchemical, satanic. When I read the Necronomicon, I'm reading whole passages out of the Karsag tablets. I'm reading the Enema Elish of Babylon. I'm reading whole Akkadian fragments here that I've read in Asiatic researches from the 1890s, translations. And when I read the Necronomicon, that somebody told me it was bullshit. The book of the names of the dead. I'm told all my life, it's an evil book, leave it alone. But in that book, I find out that the ancient ones are going to be released once more, and that the whole focus is mankind, and that the ancient ones are trying to open the gate of Yaxakak. I find out it's the Great Pyramid. And I read these this amazing mystic occult poem called Ketub. So I did a video about it called Daughters of Pale Lilith Stand. I was so fascinated with this occult poem and how it's revealing the true nature of our reality, and that everything that I was forced to believe, I was raised to believe, is actually exact opposite of the truth, and that these satanic and these occult literature, they're not even telling me nothing evil. They're telling me real stuff about the construct, about what's going on, and what that damn thing is sitting in northern Egypt that all demons hear. Remember, I told you guys, every time Typhon appears, for some reason, the gods flee to the Great Pyramid in Egypt. This is in the traditions. I didn't have to make that up. All I did was cite it to you from multiple sources. The gate of Rostal, the key to our immortality outside the construct, is hidden at Giza. And I find these in this occult literature, and I find out that in Ketub it talks about the ancient ones and how the ancient ones, man, they're subject to the peacock angel. Well, I already knew about the peacock angel. That's the phoenix. That's what it was called. That's what it was called in Iran, ancient Iran, and in Persia, in the Middle East, in Armenia. The peacock angel was feared. It appeared in the sky. It was absolutely beautiful, but man, it kept the archons in check. I read this beautiful poem, Ketub, that I was told it was all satanic literature. And when I read it, I see liberating material about my freedom in the construct. And I look at the writings of Charles Burgoyne. He was called a Christian mystic, and he was deemed a Satanist in his day. He wrote an amazing book, Ancient Egypt, Light of the World, Volume 1 and Volume 2. And in the 1880s, he wrote all about the dark satellite and how it's coming back. And it's going to open a gate. And the ancient ones are going to come out on the world, in the world and rule once more. And they're going to try and use humanity to open the gate of Yaxakak, Giza, the Great Pyramid. Yeah, man, it's all here, guys. The lie becomes the truth. All the things that we're not meant to know are hidden in plain sight in literature we're told is bad for us. All the things that are designed to control us are the things that we're raised with, that we're told is the truth. But this is the photo negative of a real reality. There's nothing true in it. Remember, even in the gospel narrative, people were believing the exact opposite of what was happening. I've talked about this ad nauseum. Every person that came up and got healed from Jesus actually believed Jesus did it. And he rebuked them almost every single time, telling them it was their faith that made them whole, but they weren't listening. The exact opposite of the truth. All right. Miss T, that's right. Only smart and sexy people are allowed to hit that like button. I like that. Give that girl a raise. Yeah, we're not done. We're not done. So in the course of it's not just Charles Burgoyne and Daughters of Pale-Lilithstan, the poem Ketub, the Necronomicon. It's not just those, the old alchemical treatises I've showed that are just amazing. But no, man, it's legends and lore and myths and fairy tales. All these things we were told are bullshit. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. You're in a simulation. That's where we're going in this video. And I got a lot of people who hate on me for saying that. Yeah, I get a hate mail, guys. Hell yeah. Got all kinds of people throw out little darts in their podcasts on YouTube and all that. And then got a whole bunch of other ones that just absolutely just go through and rake all my material and use it as their own and never even cite me. But that's cool, because from the beginning of my channel, I said that's where this is going. You guys remember, they've been with me the longest. I called that. I said from the very beginning, people are going to be borrowing my material and spreading it around the world, and I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that. That tea is good. Started with tea with some ginger, and now I'm gonna switch over to coffee. Okay. Aaron's Choice coffee for those who want to wake up. So you can imagine in the month of July 2040, when hundreds of millions of people are surviving hand to mouth, a lot of structures haven't made it. We're all living in communities. We're getting to know each other real well now because we have survived something that literally shook our buildings apart. And we're all in these campsites and we're doing all these things. I'm not going to be the one that people point fingers at and say, hey, man, aren't you that guy that had that famous YouTube channel? And man, you could have told us this was going to happen. You could have. I'm not going to be that guy. I'm going to be the guy that people gather around saying, damn, what do we do now? You told us this was coming. May of 2040 is the subject of my channel. May of 2040 is the subject of my published books. The month of May of 2040 has more data attached to it than anything else I have ever promulgated, ever. That's why I'm vehement. That's why I'm passionate. That's why I'm in not give an F mode. I do not care about your feelings at all. I'm going to keep putting material out. I'm going to keep doing call outs. I'm going to keep humbling people. I'm going to keep overwhelming people with data because this is what needs to be done. We have 15.2 years remaining. I'm not going to be that guy that people lynch. I'm not going to be that guy that people talk about from 2,000 miles away talking about, I remember, man, why did he warn us? He had millions of people listening to him by 2039. Yeah, I'm not going to be that guy. I'm going to be the guy you remember that, damn, man, that dude told us exactly. And I'm still on the same mission I was from the very first week I started a YouTube channel. Y'all remember what that mission was? My mission was to one day have enough resources to where my 1,055-page chronicon of the history of the world would be available in a book that is imperishable, made of material that's almost indestructible, and put into a badass fireproof steel box and distributed to thousands of places all over the world. That's my goal. That's where this is going. I just haven't had that opportunity yet to be able. Well, the opportunities, I guess it's slow because my publisher is now editing the final version of Chronicon. So, but I still haven't had the opportunity. That's going to take a lot of money, but that's the end game here. I'll be satisfied once I've done that. All we have to do is make sure a few copies survive into the next epic. That's it. So in the course of, going through all these narratives, I was totally oblivious to Tartaria. I didn't know anything about Tartaria. I've been hearing about it. There's a lot of hubbub about it. Martin Leakey's all off into it. I don't know anything about it. I just hear about it. I hear people asking me, hey, Jason, what do you think about Tartaria? I'm like, I don't think anything about it. Ancient Tartary, I mean, it's part of the historical record. I got a little bit about it in my Chronicon. Didn't think much of it. Finally, it just became overwhelming and I had to do some looking. So I did a video. I had to when I found what I found. Who would have thunk that Tartaria, the thing that everybody's fascinated with and talking about, the very first time Tartaria entered the historical record, I showed the old book. I showed exactly where it was, 1212 AD, which is a Phoenix year on the 138-year timeline of Phoenix. Who would have thought? Then, come to find out, the Ottoman Empire, the Ottoman Empire of the Turks is the actual extenuation of the Tartarian culture. The Ottoman Empire was founded by Uthman I. The historical record, as I showed in these old books, Uthman the Tartarian. From the first regnal year of Uthman the Tartarian establishing the Ottoman Empire, the 138th year of the Ottoman Empire, they achieved their goal. They took Constantinople from the Greeks and renamed it Istanbul. It was the dream of the Turks, and they did it in the 138th year. So I'm glad I researched Tartaria, but that's what I found. Other than that, I didn't find anything else. Tartaria literally bled, started by Genghis Khan and the Khans, and it just later became the Turks, and the Turkish Empire ruled for like 700 years. So 600 years. So it was it's amazing. Tartaria became the Turks. That's what happened. A mystery here. The only mystery is the Phoenix connections. You just can't make this stuff up. So in the course of my studies, I'm looking into different things and I find out, wow, the Crusades were psyops. Who would have guessed? Who would have thunk that the Crusades were psyops? I've gone so deep on the Crusades on Archaix TV, not YouTube. But who would have thunk the Crusades were psyops? Who would have thunk that the same people who were funding the Turks were also funding, not the Turks. The Turks and the Saracens and the Mamluks, the people that were funding them were also funding the Christians. Who would have thought that the Normans got their gold from these people who were funding both sides of the war? Where have we heard that before? Pitting the Christians against the Muslims was a land grab. A lot of money exchanged hands, but it left Islam and it left Christianity and went straight into Jewish pockets. That's the Crusade. That's the history of the Crusades. So, in the course of researching different wars, come to find out, hell, the Civil War, never called the Civil War till way later. It was called the War of Northern Aggression, and then later called the War between the states, and then much later called the Civil War. It wasn't civil at all, but it wasn't called for civility. It was called Civil War, meaning intra-government. So, yeah, the Civil War was a land grab. Involved the same people, carpetbaggers. Who would have thunk? Would have never. All this I did not look for this information. It just came to me reading these old books. So during the Crusades, there was a huge psyop. Psyops are nothing new. There was a huge. Thank you, Morgan. Thank you, David Morgan. That's the only thing I've seen today was David Morgan. I haven't been looking at my chat. David Morgan of the Morgan Report is in the house. I've showed you guys his book. He was recently on my channel. So who would have thought that these were all land grabs? Who would have thought that the church would have come up with a conspiracy so convincing that hundreds of thousands of Europeans would willingly lose their lives, then lose their wives and children into indentured servitude, and then lose their estates and lands and everything to the state and to the church based off a lie? Who would have thought that the psyop of Edessa would have been so convincing? Do you know what that was? The Roman Catholic Church and the European monarchies hatched a plan, and they forged documents, or the Jews forged the documents and brought them to them concerning Prester John of the Empire of India, and that he was just waiting with his Christian armies, and that they were going to defeat the evil Muslims, and all he was waiting for was for the next crusade, when all the crusaders would make a plan, and if they would just march out in faith again to go attack Jerusalem, then he would meet them from the other side, and this super Christian army would save the day and give Jerusalem back. Come to think of it, it probably was a Jewish psyop. It's the psyop of Edessa. It's the legend of Prester John, which goes into a whole nother aspect. You know, I started my research over 20 years ago, my publishing over 20 years ago, my research 30 years ago on ancient timekeeping systems and calendars. And one of my discoveries really kind of blew my mind. And I had to do a video about it, 3761. The Jewish calendar is fake. And a lot of people have gotten stressed out about that. They have attached their beliefs or whatever to the Jewish calendar. They really believe that this is the year 5871, Hebrew reckoning, whatever. Every bit of it was created 400 years ago. It is an absolute lie. And there are no Jewish scribes or rabbinical scribes prior to that ever mentioned that system, ever. They use the old Anno Mundi system. They use the Roman Julian system. So it's another thing that we found out. You know, the Tartarian narrative is real big on telling you that, hey guys, look, man, it's proof that there's a missing 1,000 years on a bunch of these dates. There's an I in front of three numbers, so it's not 1587. It's I 587, which is really the year 587 instead of 1587. But that's guys, these guys, they're just not educated to understand the difference between the Julian and the Gregorian dating systems. There were days added to the calendar, and chronology used to be something that was taken very seriously. So in 1752, you had to show on all published writings after 1752 for a period of time until everybody caught up. You had to show, were you using Julian reckoning or were you using Gregorian reckoning post 1752 in your publications? So many people, to designate that they were using Julian reckoning, would put an I. Why? Because the letter J wasn't common. It wasn't even being used at the time. So they put the letter I. The letter I and the three numbers designated, I was Roman numeral for 1,000, but it also designated J, Julian. It was the Julian calendar. That was the letter I for. So anytime you come across dates that said I 587, it means it's the year 1587 Julian reckoning. But Julian reckoning might be 6 months off from Gregorian reckoning by that date. So a chronologist would factor it in and figure out which one was the more accurate. So these are things that in Archaix that I've had to go through only because so much of this information is in the field. And other people bring it to my attention, and it just baffles me. Like, wow, man, this is all described in old books. So, again, the alchemy, turning base lead into gold. This was really popular for a 250-year period, all through in the monarchies of Renaissance era, late medieval to Renaissance era Europe. Yeah, the alchemy was a big deal, but the alchemical treatises that I've shown in my Occultus Mysterium were telling us something totally different. They were showing us a secret knowledge about resets and the elite hiding underground and the phoenix coming to reset the world. This is what all these alchemical treatises are showing us. But those who are studied in alchemy, those who are trained in alchemy, have been given a system of ciphers that tell them that all this means something else. This is exactly what these people have been doing for a very long period of time. It's exactly what the New Testament is. It's exactly what the Kabbalah is. A series of ciphers that get the initiated to understand exactly how to interpret something, while others look at it and believe they're looking at something else. In the case of alchemy, there were Jewish people moving money throughout Europe. The alchemy was a cover story, because silver and gold was being fleeced out of European communities. Many of them were being accused of coin clipping. Every once in a while, one would have to rise up and defend the other Jewish people and say, hey, look, we're wealthy. Even though they're bankrupting the people of Europe, the local Jews had money and they had wealth and provender and supplies and animals, and their children were well dressed. And this is a cycle that went on over and over and over and over. And alchemy was an excellent way to at misdirection, because a Jewish scribe or moneylender could go into the court of a king and tell the king a secret and say, I want to show you a book. I want to show you. It's a very long process. It's very difficult, but I'll do it for you. But the reason why my house is wealthy and why our community is wealthy is not because we're stealing the crown. We're not stealing your money. We're not coin clipping. We're not using false weights. We're not practicing usury like the people accuse us of doing. We're not doing any of that. It's because we learned how to turn lead into gold. And then they would be called on it. But they have already got the gold measured out. Ingots of gold already in lumps and melted down to make it look like it was recently made. And they had the same amount of lead, and they would go through the process, and it's all effery. It's all trickery. It is old psyop of Edessa. It's a psyop of the Crusades. It's the old psyop of the Oracle of Delphi. That's all it was. And the king would be satisfied, and he would be promised, hey, if you keep our secret, we can do this again, but we can only do this in certain phases of the moon. And they controlled it. So they would give the king back some of the money they had stolen from all the people in their financial practices, and they would keep themselves from coming under scrutiny because they were master alchemists. This is how it went. So these are the things. Like I said, the truth hurts. The truth hurts when you see how you've been psyoped over and over and over and over. And actually, a lot of people can actually look at the Archaix information, and you can see all these things still happening in the media today. Nothing's changed. Human nature doesn't change. It doesn't change at all. So another thing that I didn't set out to prove, but I had to do it when it came to my attention. There are so many occult systems at play. The origin of an occult system is never a condemnation of it. And this is what my own community has had to learn. They've taken my data sets and conclusions to think that I'm also telling them that something doesn't have value. But I'm a student of Liber Chaos and P.D. Alspia and Ishak Bentov, and I've said this many, many times. These men promoted that we live in a fiction. That fiction is able to absorb complex systems and turn them into facts, such as astrology. Just because the zodiac isn't ancient like we've been taught it is, and it's a new Greek era imposition over an older order that was more recognized, doesn't mean that modern astrology has no value. The genius is always in the applier, not the applied. It is the practitioner's usage, the soul force of the individual that overrides all mechanical and mathematical systems. A soul that is on fire is able to use whatever system that they want to manipulate the holography. This is the way it's always been. This is why astrology is valid. This is why tarot reading is valid. It's not the tarot cards, it's the one reading them that is key. And it's always been that way. It's not the person who stirs the tea, it's the tea reader. It doesn't matter what system that is applied in a cult. The field itself, the informed field of the highly individualized soul interfacing with the overfield, will use the programming of the overfield and recode it for personal experience. That personal experience can also be broadcast into the experience of others they're interfacing with. It's never the system. It's always the person. So I couldn't believe when I did tarot cards and I only found out they're only 500 years old. I thought these things were ancient because they're put out that way, but come to find out that the Renaissance era French, the Victorian French, they had a fascination with ancient Egypt. And the tarot cards came out of a playing deck of cards. So I thought it was the other way around. I thought the tarot cards were ancient and then decks of playing cards came later. No, the decks of playing cards were first. Then omen cards and tarot cards were developed. Then more complex gaming cards. And now today we got omen decks from anything you can make a deck on today, even a Pokemon deck. But still, yeah, it shocked me. I did a video on the tarot. It doesn't take away from tarot readings. It's still a system. Like I said, it's never the system. It's always the soul that implements it. That's where the value is. So again, people got their feelings hurt recently when I did 2 videos showing there's no 1800s reset. Well, sooner or later I'm going to get around to it, but there's no 1700s reset either at all. At all. There was a long reset. Martin and I just covered it. There was a long reset when for 250 years under the Normans, Europe got real technologically advanced, was building star forts, building cathedrals, building massive fleets of ships, castles, something else. I can't remember. But yeah, it was organs, pipes, instruments, everything. And then all of a sudden, the long reset started. 400 years of plagues just killing the human family. In mass, faster than people could be born. Just 400 years of plagues. Whole cities, catacombs full of people standing up. They had just put the body standing up and then bury them. Or then seal the walls so the stench wouldn't get out to the rest of the city. Yeah, this went on for 400 years. This is why we have so many European cities that are pancaked on top of each other. There's just, when hundreds of thousands of people die in a 2 or 3 week period of time, there's no way to bury that many people. So you fill the rooms with bodies, seal the rooms up, build on top of them. It sucks. But that's what you do. So I will say, I have in divulging all my research, I've triggered more people over the zodiac than any other paradigm. It's the zodiac, and you guys know that is my position that the zodiac of Aries to Pisces is a Greek era construction. And what I mean is it took like 600 years to actually put it together. Even by the 1st century BC, it still wasn't. There's still no evidence anywhere in the historical record. There's not a single zodiac that's ever been shown that shows Aries to Pisces. We're just assuming that somewhere it existed at that time, but there are no historical records. There are no absolute pictures. And for those who want to default to the zodiac of Dendera in Egypt, you're going to get your feelings hurt, because not only are the constellations not Aries through Pisces, they're different concepts attached to them. Some of them overlap, yes, but it's not the zodiac we know today. Additionally, it too was built by the Greeks, and it only dates to the 1st century BC. That's a problem. That's a problem. So, you know that the actual first time in the historical record that we ever have a mention of the actual zodiac, not the word zodiac. Zodiacs go back thousands of years, guys. They're lunar zodiacs. It's a belt around the ecliptic. It's the passage of the moon. The word zodiac is not proof of the solar zodiac of Aries through Pisces. Zodiacs are old. They're lunar and they're ancient. But the solar zodiac is a new imposition. And I've done 2 videos on it, but I'm going to have to do a third. But 713 BC, the old zodiac ceased to exist, and a new zodiac happened. And I've got people who are critical because they don't understand a system that has two ecliptics. Well, they never took it into consideration that we have another ecliptic. We've always had another ecliptic. For 25 years, I've been drawing illustrations of 2 ecliptics, showing that Phoenix, the dark satellite, Luna, Earth, and Nemesis X all orbit around Nemesis X. And then, at a totally different declination, there's another ecliptic where you find Venus, Mars, not Earth originally, but it was Venus, Mars. It was Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. And the Teich's-Bode law demonstrates mathematically that it's a complete closed system. But because now Earth is in the solar system, on the solar's ecliptic, tucked in between two orbital belts where it does not belong, it disrupts the perfect Teich's-Bode mathematical distribution of worlds. This is what the sky sim shows us. I don't believe the sky is real. I believe it's holographic. We'll get to that. I believe it's complete. It's a holofield, but it's still showing us a movie. So 713 BC, the date of Emanuel Velikovsky, when the entire world changed its calendar from 360 days to 365 days, was a celestial event involving the sun stopping in the sky and then moving backwards. Now, Phoenix always descends out of the northern space and disappears after passing over the sun in the month of May into southern space. On the other side of the year is November, and that's where we see Nemesis X. Nemesis X passes coming down from the north of space, disappearing into the south. There's a model here, and it's a dual ecliptic model, and it's perfect. And if you were to just understand that our world before 713 BC actually moved over the sun and under the sun, just like Phoenix does at 138 years, just like Nemesis X does at 792 years, and you'll understand that way out there is a black star called Nemesis that we can't see. This is the plane of the ecliptic for Nemesis. But in 713 BC, our world, for some reason, wasn't going north to south anymore. When it hit the plane or got close to the plane of Sol, it adopted a movement next to Sol. But from the surface of our world, it looked like Sol stopped moving and then went backwards as we got on the new plane. And then all of a sudden, we were emerging out of the Greek Dark Age when this happened. But all of a sudden, the Assyrians start posting cuneiform tablets saying that the orders of the heavens had changed. The Chinese said the mandate in heaven was altered. In ancient India, they declared a great age had ended and another one began. And the legends of the ancient Greeks said the old order of Orion and his cohorts, the belt, the old zodiac that Orion led, was banished by none other than Gaia, Mother Earth, working with Apollo. I'm going to show it to you. I'm going to show you what two ecliptics look like. Before we go on, we have other things to discuss, and this is going to be a whole different video. It's going to end up being a whole different video, but for argument's sake, just so you'll understand what I'm talking about, let me show you real quick what we're looking at here. All right, I'm going to share my screen. Let me get in here. All right, so let me share my screen. 1 hour and 45 minutes. I think we're making some pretty good time. Consider all things considered. All right. So you guys can see right here. Yeah, I know you can see it. This is the Milky Way. This is the Milky Way. Nothing to see here, guys. Nothing to see here. What you're looking at is the Milky Way in the heavens with a backdrop of all the known constellations. That belt you see, this line I put in front of the Milky Way, that is the Milky Way. It is the galactic plane. That's the galactic plane right there. It means just like the ecliptic is the equator of the sun, with the sun being in the middle, the equator in the center, it forms a flat disk that all the planets move on. This is in the sky sim. This is what the sky sim is showing us through measurements and through optics. This belt right here across the sky is the belt of the Milky Way, which is the galactic plane. Now, if we were to follow today's zodiac, we have Leo, Libra, Ophiuchus right here, Sagittarius, Scorpio, all the way down here to Taurus, the Pleiades and Taurus right here at the bottom. This is a totally different ecliptic plane. This is the ecliptic that we have today because the world is positioned between Mars and Venus today right here. The only problem is we don't have any evidence whatsoever prior to the 8th century BC that any of these constellations were even important to any civilizations in the world. After 713 BC, it takes centuries. It still takes centuries, but then they become adopted into a new zodiac. But prior to 713 BC, guess what constellations all have myths and legends about them? Auriga, Perseus, Cygnus, Cassiopeia, Andromeda, Aegina. I'm going to show you another list. That's hard to read. So, Nemesis ecliptic is same as the galactic plane, the Milky Way. Phoenix, the dark satellite, Nemesis X, they still travel this plane. They still travel this plane. This is why astronomer Hoffman was disbelieved in the month of May of 1764 when he observed by telescope a massive object darken the sun, and he put it in the Royal Astronomical Society minutes that the object descended out of the dark northern celestial sphere, darkened the sun, passed southward, and vanished into the blackness of space. They disbelieved him. Why? Because there's nothing in recorded history except Hittite tablets that talk about any objects darkening the sun on a north to south trajectory. It's not on the ecliptic plane. It's going against the ecliptic. That's why they disbelieved him. But he recorded it anyway, and because he was a prestigious astronomer, they left it in the minutes. And this is how Charles Fort found it. The belt you see right here is our modern zodiac. The belt that's at an angle. The one horizontal to the plane right here that's covering the actual Milky Way, the galactic plane, is the original zodiac. The original zodiac, this is a current ecliptic of Sol and the zodiac of Aries to Pisces, not known in the ancient world. It is a Greek construction. That's the one that's at an angle. This is the one we have today. As you can see, if you were to look 90 degrees perpendicular, you'll find Ursa Minor where Polaris is. There's Draco, the old pole star. So this declination is almost perfect by example. The original zodiac was along the brighter Milky Way on the Nemesis ecliptic. Earth came from the Nemesis ecliptic. The Titius-Bode law proves that we do not belong on the Sol plane. We came from the Nemesis plane. And in the book of Revelation, which is not prophecy, but an ancient scientific text revealing the programming of the sky sim, in 2046, our world is removed from the Sol plane. The zodiac ceases to exist. Aries through Pisces, and we get put back on the original Nemesis plane where the Pleiades, Arcturus, Orion, Cassiopeia, Andromeda, Cephus, Auriga, Era, the Altar, all the original constellations are put back into their place. All the constellations for which the most ancient religions and traditions and Greek myths talk about. Because contrary to popular belief, zodiac myths, Greek myths, only date to the 4th, 3rd, and 2nd century BC. Yeah, guys, I've done my homework on the zodiac. This isn't even my presentation. I'm just showing you where we're at in this material. It's real interesting. Here's a little clip about Apollo. So Apollo the sun god and god of the animal herds was Artemis's brother, and he did not appreciate Orion's claim. Gaia, the great earth goddess, didn't like Orion's boasting either. Apollo and Gaia discussed the situation, and they decided Orion had to go. To accomplish this, Gaia made a giant scorpion called Scorpio that would hunt its hunter. Once Orion caught wind of this, he knew he would lose. He decided to run, but Scorpio chased after him. This is a description of the ecliptic plane changing. Scorpio is just now born. Scorpio comes into a whole new zodiac. A whole new zodiac takes place, and what's really interesting is the location of Scorpio is where the two planes actually intersect. So they acted like a hinge. We'll get into it later, but it changes everything. You got to understand, 2046, we're going right back to the original system. Everything. In the pre-flood world, it's the Pleiades star system that was venerated. It was Arcturus that was venerated. It was Orion that was venerated. In all the ancient systems, it was Sirius, the dog star, that was measured, and it was venerated. It was the moon that kept time. That's not the world we have today. But according to the programming of the Bible, in the last days will be like the days of Noah. Days of Noah before the flood means we're going to return back to that original ecliptic. Once Earth moves back to the original ecliptic, we're going to have the original zodiac back. The same one we had before the 8th century BC. How do we know that this is in the book of Revelation in the programming? Because it says it. Says it's going to reduce the sun, the moon, the earth, the stars, day and nighttime to a third. It's going to be a terrible cataclysm. It's going to change time. How did the ancient Maya warn us? Because they invented the Mayan long count, which was nothing but a day count system of programming of 1,872,000 days to the exact day of November 2nd, when this event will happen, when Nemesis X returns in 2046. How do we know the Maya got it perfect? Because it is exactly 713 BC when the Mayan system altered completely. 3113 BC, the Mayan system was factored on 400 years of Bacton, which is 360 days a year. It was 864,000 days perfectly to 713 BC when the year changed to 365.25. The change of year from 365.25 would last exactly 2,760 years to 2046. Why is that relevant? Because 2,760 years is perfectly 552 times 5. It is divisible by 138. From the very beginning, I've told you guys, Nemesis X and Phoenix are a part of the same apparatus, this mechanism in the sky. It's almost like they're working together, but they're coming back to back in 2040 and in 2046. The Maya nailed it perfectly. And for those new to my channel, don't think I'm making up anything about the Mayan long count. My Archaix veterans will know. They'll correct you in the comment section real quick. I had books published before 2012 about the Mayan long count not ending in 2012, and that 2046 is the actual mathematical corrected date. So here we have an admission that we know Apollo is the usurper. We know Apollo is the sun. You guys know right now we're in the second seal. Apollo Helios. We know Apollo is the deceiver. We know the book of Revelation is about opening up the gate of Yaxakak to release who? Apollyon. Who is Apollyon? The destroyer. What did Apollo do in 713 BC when Apollo worship was just on the rise? Because remember, Apollo isn't original Greek. Apollo worship came from the East, the Middle East. And it was a Greek imposition. It imposed himself. And later, the Delphic Oracle adopted Apollo. And Apollo is the key to understand. He's the god of prophecy, which we could actually say is the god of programming. Truth be told. So yeah, the whole zodiac deal is really it's tantalizing. It's very interesting. If I was a computer specialist, I would do a better model, so you would understand the difference. But Nemesis X is a dark star. We know that it's near us somewhere. We just can't see it. The reason we know is because the measurable perturbations of Neptune, Uranus, and Saturn, the pull on Saturn's rings, everything that's been measured, all these optics. I'm not telling you the sky is real. I'm telling you that it is a multi-tiered hologram showing us a movie, and that it's everything that we can study at any depth. Multi-tiered hologram can provide everything, even parallax. It can give us all, it can just continually feed us more information. We are in a very advanced simulation, but that simulation is showing us a movie. And you know what? There are things to be learned inside of it. And one of those things is that almost every mystery of the ancient world is made sense of once you understand that we've never had one ecliptic plane. We've always had two. And even science will tell you that more than 50% of the luminaries you see in the sky, if you magnify them, they have twin stars. That twinkling you see is actually a binary system. There are many trinary systems up there as well. So if the sky sim is showing us that over 50% of the systems up there have more than one sun, then it's not a stretch that we have two suns as well, and something very bad happened to one of them, and it's caused all this other stuff. This is what the study of calendrics, the study of calendars and timekeeping systems has done. This is how Archaix started, trying to piece all these things together by studying the calendars of ancient systems. What I have uncovered, and I've said this many times, is that there is evidence that we are on borrowed calendars from somewhere else. And as time is kept on one ecliptic, the time on another ecliptic remains unchanged, no matter what happens to our world on this ecliptic. And this is why Phoenix is the keeper of the calendar. Because nothing that happens to us on this ecliptic would affect Phoenix's movement of 138 years on this ecliptic. We're in a vast simulated construct, but it still obeys very ancient protocols and rules. So this 138-year periodicity of Phoenix is amazing, but we're not going to get into it. We've been talking about Phoenix so many times. There's so many corroborating new discoveries on Phoenix lately. You can just go in the playlist and see those. I don't want to waste your time on that. But Phoenix has brought to our attention vapor canopies. Vapor canopies are the collapse of the mesosphere after periods of time when the ice on Antarctica and the Arctic is gone. All that moisture has to go somewhere when it's gone. And ancient map makers go to Antarctica and they map it out. But they can only do it when the moisture is gone. Where's the moisture? It's back in the mesosphere. The ancient text said there was an ocean above, and it magnified the stars. And the moon filled the sky, and there was no hint of a sun. The reason there was no hint of a sun, and yet there was still day and nighttime, was because when the sun passed over the sky, the moisture turned super humid and blocked the sunlight out. The ancients saw a dark sky with a lit area over it. It had a vapor canopy, just like Venus has a vapor canopy today. A vapor canopy. But at nighttime, when the sun was gone, the canopy would condense. And Genesis says every evening, because there was no rain, a mist from the sky watered the ground, watered the earth, whatever. And this is the type of atmosphere, this is the type of ecosphere we had back then, or biosphere. The Great Flood was a collapse of that biosphere. It was a huge cataclysm. It flooded all over the world, but the whole world didn't flood. The only place that actually flooded out and killed a whole bunch of people was the Mediterranean, which was anciently called Middle Earth. Middle Earth, Mediterranean. It flooded out, killed all this. It was the homelands of the Indo-Iranian people at the time. 552 years after the collapse of the vapor canopy was the Archaixan deluge. It was here on Archaix. I've done like 8 videos featuring the Archaixan deluge, talking about it in depth. It is one of the worst cataclysms in recorded history, but you've never heard about it until I showed you about 50 different books that all talk about it and gave the exact date for it and what had happened. I actually have 5 very long presentations on YouTube, a whole series just on the Archaixan deluge, but I talk about it a lot. Archaixan deluge, massive cataclysm, but you heard about it first, or you got all the details about it right here on Archaix. but it totally changes what we know about the ancient world. We were pretty advanced until the Ogygian deluge caught everybody by surprise. Why did it catch everybody by surprise? Because they were living under a different calendar. And they had no idea that that calendar had ceased to exist and had been supplanted with another. Easy to show all this. So in my Phoenix research, I've shown you guys the publication of ancient texts. I have books that show you when different ancient epics and texts were all written. And when we look at the whole chart, which I've provided you guys, it is absolutely amazing to see that when you superimpose a Phoenix chart over it of all the great Phoenix cataclysms, shows perfectly the publication of all these epics and histories and traditions and all these famous writings. They're all post-reset constructions after a cataclysm. The chart shows whole periods post-reset of illiteracy, and then how civilizations rise up and then they start publishing materials and publishing books. But now it's very mythological. It's very cartoonish what they're trying to describe. Yeah, here in Archaix, we've talked about the Acambaro artifacts, that show a vapor canopy world where humans were interacting with marsupials and giant reptiles and giant amphibians. And a lot of people say they're like dinosaurs, but they're not. They're just reptiles and amphibians who are growing to huge sizes because of vapor canopy conditions. We've discussed cyclical flood theory, an amazing scientific theory published in 1871 that does away with ice ages. It's a theory that does not need ice ages at all to explain all the glacial damage and errata that's found all over the northern hemisphere. It is an entirely new theory that makes sense, that does away with ice ages. But it wasn't uniformitarian, so they didn't fund it. They stuck with ice ages, which today now there's 59 different ice age theories because they still can't figure out how they're even possible. It's still theoretical. Another thing that Archaix has done to bring a lot of value to Egyptology is something that's still being ignored across the field. And it's the fact that I have isolated so many proofs that the number 138 and in multiple dimensions of arithmetic is encoded in the rectilinear dimensions of the Great Pyramid everywhere. And that the Great Pyramid traditions connect it to both Enoch, an architect, and the Phoenix legend. So this is something that other researchers are going to have to come to the table. I'm not done releasing information. I'm going to do another Phoenix holography deal showing even more that I've never shown before of new 138 patterns all found throughout the Great Pyramid. Yeah, I'm just gonna overwhelm until people come to the table and say, man, we got to look at this. Because if anybody has a theory about the Great Pyramid out there and they're still ignoring this 138 sequencing that's found throughout the pyramid because they want to ignore the fact that Archaix is the one that has published this 138-year period called the Phoenix timeline, then sooner or later they're just going to be overwhelmed. It's different communities that are now coming to the table. It's you guys that are pressuring other content creators. I know because I'm hearing about it. It's you guys telling people, man, you guys are full of shit. You're ignoring all this data right here. Yeah, this is my intent. I'm going to overwhelm the community with data until finally people come to the table and say, okay, man, let's look at this. Because right now I'm just being ignored, and I'm cool. I'm cool with that. So the 600-year Anuna great year period that I showed you guys, that historians and mythographers across the board claim it never happened. We never had a 600-year calendar. We never had a calendar or a timekeeping system that was based off units of 600. Yeah, this is what you find on Google. Yeah, Wikipedia will tell you real quick, never existed. I showed you guys. I did a video on the Anunnaki Nur calendar, and I showed you all the old books that told of an ancient calendar of 600-year periods that goes way back to Sumer. Yep. That's the value of looking at old books, man. This is why in Archaix I avoid Google. Google is about the control of information. You got to go to the old source materials, man, to find all this critical data. The Nemesis X object of 792-year periods. The Nemesis X object is very harrowing. It's never good, but it is It's returning in 2046. 2046 just happens to also, it's a totally different mathematical construct. This Nemesis X timeline going back 58 centuries, it's totally independent of the Mayan long count, and yet they both hit 2046. So also you guys know 2046 is the date Nostradamus provides in his secret date index for a massive cataclysm. But this is what we've found in Archaix, this predator versus prey ecosphere that we live in, where the negative default programming of the construct is it's not right. There is an underlying substrate of darkness that goes throughout reality. It's here. We feel it. We know something's wrong. Well, it's like the Matrix says, it's like a splinter in your mind. But this anyone who just sits down and just processes what kind of construct is this, that a seal is going to scream underwater in pain and terror as a great white shark tears it apart. What kind of construct is this when living organisms get stung by a poison venom of a spider only to be wrapped in a cocoon and saved for dinner and then eaten alive? What kind of construct is this? Who made such a construct where Hypatia, only because she was female and she offended the men with her intelligence, these Christian scholars got together so offended with Hypatia, they held her down and they scraped the flesh off her skin with oyster shells. What kind of predator versus prey ecosphere is this? My God would have never built anything like this at all. So I have to default to the God of this world. And when I read about the God of this world, I find out all kinds of things. Oh, it's the Prince of Darkness. Oh, the God of this world, Satan, the adversary. Oh, yeah, if I read the New Testament, the God of this world is the prince of the principalities of the air. He's the devil. Amazing. I can flip on over to the Gnostic material and I find out that he's Yaldabaoth, the demiurge. He's the creator of this construct, the world, but he's not the oversoul. He's not the almighty, just the God of this construct. Yeah, this predator versus prey ecosphere is not home. It's background programming to something rather dark. I also have 3 or 4 video presentations on the Medusa effect. It's something that we have to take and consider. And this is where things get really, really interesting. Imagine a scenario where pollywogs, little doodle bugs, roly-polies, whatever you want to call them, just plain old crickets and grasshoppers, locusts, praying mantis, bumblebees, honeybees, mosquitoes, and fruit flies. Imagine all these little insects that exist today in your backyard. Roaches, centipedes, wasps, moths, butterflies, all these beautiful little insects, the entire world of entomology exists in your backyard today. And yet every one of these specimens is found in 285,000-year-old fossils, dating sometimes to 4 or 5 million years ago. This is what we're told. Whole specimens. How do you fossilize butterfly wings? To make matters even worse, absolutely no biological changes or in transitional forms. The exact same insects we find in the fossil records are the ones that live in your backyard. I've got videos about this. I also have videos about the Medusa effect, because the exact same specimens of deep ocean clams, oysters, crabs, lobsters, jellyfish. How do you fossilize jellyfish? How do you turn to stone octopus? The uniformitarian model can never explain the Archaix evidence, but I have shown hundreds of pictures of impossible fossils, but they do make sense. They absolutely make sense. If we are in a technologically advanced holographic medium that is contained in something like a Dyson shell, if somebody flips the power off, then the entire construct freezes. Absolute zero. The freezing goes all the way to the deepest oceans, where all these marine organisms like jellyfish have been found fossilized in 3D form. Yeah, fossils aren't just smushed sharks that have been crushed by sediments and all that. We have perfect 3D fossils of delicate jellyfish. How is that possible? I'm going to tell you how. The entire ocean had to flash freeze. How do we know it was a flash froze? It wasn't a gradual freeze. It was a flash freeze. There's a couple reasons why. One reason is because all the specimens of clam and oyster beds that we have found from the ancient world that were fossilized, they're all closed. The shells and oysters are closed, which means they weren't dead. They were alive when they died. When they flash froze, they were alive. How do we know this? Because when a clam or when an oyster dies, the jaw, the muscles, the tendrils holding the hinge tendrils for the just call them muscles. The muscles that keep the shells closed under all that pressure open. That's how we know they died. This is why on the seashore, this is why on the beach you'll always find the half shells. They open. Jellyfish froze solid. Animals with the hackles still up fighting each other, frozen solid. Animals and mammals and fish in the middle of giving birth, frozen solid, petrified 3D. Animals swallowing other animals, flash frozen solid. I show so many pictures that I made my case. Medusa effect is real and it involved the entire world. Why is this a problem? Because if the entire world flash froze all the way to the deepest oceans and to the highest mountaintops, nothing in the world survived. If it all flash froze like we found fossils all over the world, then nothing would have survived. And yet it did survive. How did it survive? Because every single life form on the other side of that freeze is still alive today. So there was a continuance. Every piece in Archaix must fit with the next link. Now we have to entertain Charles Fort. What did Charles Fort say? Sometimes the sky just opens up and rains animals. The man was serious and provided many, many different occasions where insect rivers just fell out of clear blue skies and is recorded in the historical record. Even whole ships almost capsizing because there weren't enough men to push all the insects off the deck that were just raining from the skies and covering the ocean. It's like the construct itself overcompensates when it realizes there's an imbalance. And I have videos about that overcompensation as well because it's happened in other times. So this Medusa effect is evidence that we're in a construct and that it is controlled environment and that it can be switched off in an instant. Also, the control is happening in real time. How do we know this? Vectoring. I have two videos. One of them is subterrestrial vectoring and one of them is vectoring something else. I can't remember, but I explain the concept of vectoring and how it actually accounts for many modern mysteries. But vectoring is when a technology is being used remotely from outside the construct. And to us, it appears like a glowing ball that drips plasma and it moves around, but it's vectoring. It's trying to lock in onto a location so it can expand. When it expands, it is expanding with vectored arithmetic. That arithmetic that is expanding belongs somewhere else. So when it contracts back and disappears, whatever gets caught in that new arithmetic field gets pulled out of the construct because this right here is a fixed field. Vectoring is real. It describes UFO phenomenon, alien abduction. It describes ships disappearing. It describes all kinds of things. These little orbs are nothing but range finders from somebody operating outside the field. And it's not easy for them to look in the field using their technology to hone in on things because it's a different dimension. But once they get close enough, they can open up that dimensional envelope, and people, men, materials, animals, they get taken right out the construct. I have videos that explain this process and give examples. So in Archaix, we find that the history of the world is one of post-reset constructions. We have to put these pieces together using common sense. We have to use tenets like, if something is true somewhere, it must be true everywhere. So, or if something is true, we will always be able to see it from multiple different vantage points. So we have to use these tenets, and we have to adhere to them, because there are so many different mysteries and anomalies of the ancient world, but they've got to fit in the paradigm. The only paradigm today that answers for all anomalies is that we're in a simulated world, not a real world. And that there are observers that are able to manipulate the holography. Remember the story of Mithridates IV, the Poison King, the King of Pontus? I got a video about him. Yeah. Someone outside the construct did not want the Romans to lose power. He was the greatest threat that had ever risen against Rome. He got all these armies together. He was ready to kick their ass. They were unprepared. They had assembled emergency legions from different quarters, and he was ready. And then something fell out of the sky and blew up in between both armies on the deal. The Chinese have similar traditions that Robert Greene has divulged in his books, talking about the same scenario. Two Chinese armies coming together, and then something comes from the sky and blows up in the middle of the battlefield, scares both armies, and they decide it's an omen. We shouldn't fight today. Again, was it 1278, 1271, and then 1278? The Mongols under the Khans decide, these are the Tartarians, they decide, we're going to take Japan. We're going to go up against the shogunate. We're going to go get the samurai and the ninjas and all that. They never made it. They sent a whole fleet in 1271, wiped out in a typhoon. They wait 7 years, build an even bigger fleet, bring in even more auxiliaries, a much bigger navy and army. They load up and they head to Japan. 1278, they're wiped out to a ship in another freak typhoon. There is something in the construct that guides history. The Sikh army in ancient India was marching. They were marching along the Indus, or I think it was the Indus River, 2 months or 2 years after an earthquake had blocked the river flow. So the river had dried up, but because the river was there, it was easy to move on. So the Sikh army, on their way to attack somebody, was using the river to move faster. They never made it. Because the water had built up to the point it broke through whatever barrier was blocking it, and the river returned and drowned the whole Sikh army. Freak things like this, like when Antiochus Epiphanes was bringing his military back from Egypt after a series of conflicts. He vowed he was about to return and take the rest of Egypt. He told people, I'm about to go back and just take everything they got. No, he didn't. Because a freak tsunami rose up out of the Mediterranean when his army was going along a pass closest to the sea and pulled his whole army out to shore. How do these things happen in record time? Over and over and over in the historical record, we are met with incidents that have changed the course of history. And it's always covered up in some type of disaster. These retroactive histories, post-reset compositions, this is almost the entire history of the world. But the fact that we can find, in studying history, we can find cross-calendrical parallels that defy explanation. How is it possible We know for a fact through chronological records that Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed in 1849 BC with the Harappan civilization and all the Sumerian cities. We have the Lamentation text to prove it, which happened to be in a library that was discovered in 1849 AD. 1849 BC was when the event happened, but 1849 AD is when English German scholars found those tablets in ancient Assyrian library underground. It's a cross-calendrical parallel. But even more so, 1849 was a massive fallout from the sky, destroying the Harappan, Mohenjo-Daro, Larak civilization, Indus Valley, the Sumerian civilization, and in the Bible, Sodom and Gomorrah, Admah and Zeboam. They are all wiped out from this destruction from the sky in 1849 BC. But 1849 BC is a modern calendrical imposition. It is an ex post facto imposition on an older system. The older system is the Anno Mundi calendar. Sodom and Gomorrah, Sumer, and Harappa were all destroyed in the year 2046 of the old world. So, cross-calendrical parallels, I've got so many of them documented. This is not the time to go into them. The ISO palindromic sequences all throughout history, no time to go in. You've seen them ad nauseum. But cross-calendrical parallels, these palindrome sequences, these isometric projections, these repetitive timelines I've shown multiple times on my channel and in my published books. They're not evidence of an actual history. They're evidence of a programmed construct. So I believe history is real in the form of fixed programming. And because I believe that, I believe the future is fixed as well. If something is true somewhere, it's probably true everywhere. Therefore, if the backfield programming to our experiences here is all fixed, it changes what I'm doing here, who I am, and where I'm going. Because apparently I'm not fixed with it. I'm a free-thinking individual that can move and change my coordinates in the field. But I know the programming is fixed. That's why I'm challenging people all the time who tell me, oh, well, all history is fake. Well, if all history is fake, I have a challenge for you. How is it that all these ancient manuscripts are all saying that these disasters are happening in 138-year periods, in 276-year periods, in 414-year periods, some people call cursed earth periods, in 552-year periods called phoenix cycles? How is it that there are cycles of 690 years found in the historical record? How is it that there's 1,242-year cycles mentioned in the historical record? How is it that ancient chronographers said that the world is destroyed every 1,656 years? How is it that the ancient world was destroyed? The Ogaigian deluge destroyed 90% of humanity, collapsed every dynasty in the world in the year 2208. How is it that the ancient Maya were terrified of a system of 2760 years? How is it that these things were possible? How? When every single number I just gave to you is divisible by 138. So if you think all history is fake, you have a data set to unravel. And these texts come from all over the world, traditions all over the world, and from all different time periods. So if all history is fake, that's your first mission. Unravel that. So here is a conclusion that I must necessarily make. I can't impose my experiences on my community. All I can do is divulge data. All I can do is show you all these things that make me understand that I am 100% inside a mathematical construct. It is such a beautiful structure that it allows me to do what I want to do and be what I want to be within the confines of that programming. Even though the backfield programming and the reality tunnel, the trajectory of the backfield programming is fixed, somehow this beautiful simulacrum allows me to still be an individual within the field. So I am now able to see the bars of this digital dungeon. But understanding that I'm in a mathematical construct means nothing if I don't apply that understanding. So if the collective is fixed and everything is background programming, then that means all true potential lies in me and not my surroundings. It means that my experience here is one that is perceived and not actual. It means that the creative force within me has something to do with my trajectory. Meaning the programming is already set in place to allow me to default into any system that I want to default into. Do I want to be a Muslim? That dungeon programming is already fixed and waiting for me to participate. Do I want to be a Christian? Do I want to practice Judaism? Do I want to be free and break pattern? Every bit of that is already written in the field for me. If everything I've already told you in this video presentation is true, and I believe it is, then that changes who I am inside this experience. This experience is it's accentuated by coming. It makes sense of things that were formerly seemed irrational. I now understand the Fermi paradox. It really is a paradox. The Fermi paradox is that the sky is full with so many stars that if evolution and the uniformitarian model was real, then super advanced alien civilizations would already be dying. They would be everywhere. And every world in the universe and in all galaxies would have already been visited and multiple times. And there would be derelict ships that we would disguise as worlds. There would be all kinds of evidence on our own world that an ancient civilization was here. But the Fermi paradox still stands. It means there's no evidence. It means not a single shred of true scientific evidence exists that we have ever been visited, or that there is even an extraterrestrial civilization extant anywhere. Why? The Fermi paradox mathematically means that this should exist, and yet the world of experience tells us none of that's true. Phenomena is manufactured to deceive, but none of it is true. Why? Because we live in a controlled environment, and the sky is holographic, not actual. The Fermi paradox is only real inside this experience. Outside this Dyson shell holography, the Fermi paradox wouldn't be a thing, because there probably are multitudes of other civilizations out there, and this is only one controlled construct out of many. But inside this construct, we're the only ones here. So, except the Galactic Federation. Now, there are other things about this experience. Thank you guys for the donations. I really appreciate that. I don't mean not to thank you. I'm just so in my zone. I just can't look at the chat. Okay. The dichotomy paradox also allows us to wrap our mind around the fact that this reality isn't real. It's manufactured to feel real by virtue of the central nervous system, which is a filtering system. This holography is like a Mandelbrot set. The more you look, the more you'll see. The more you expect to see, the more the construct will feed you. So let me give you an example of the dichotomy paradox. In the dichotomy paradox, you have dichotomy Jason running across a dichotomy field. I'm running. I see where I'm going. I'm going to the other side of the field. Dichotomy Jason makes it to halfway across the field. Mathematically, if I've traveled halfway across the field, I'm halfway to my destination to get to the other side of that field. So dichotomy Jason runs. Dichotomy Jason gets to the halfway point. Once I get to the halfway point, there's just half more distance to get to the other side of the field. But anytime dichotomy Jason takes off and runs to get to the other half, dichotomy Jason stops and I still have half to go. Now, from the perspective of dichotomy Jason at the beginning of that journey, my journey is getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. But from the perspective of dichotomy Jason in the race, I'm always halfway to the other side of the field. Halfway to the other side of the field. Every time I cross half the distance, I'm halfway to the other side of the field. Dichotomy Jason is just like the 1.618 phi spiral of the golden mean. I'm in a spiral that never closes. I'm in a Mandelbrot set that the more I choose to experience, the more is fed to me, but I'm not going anywhere. Dichotomy Jason may have a tremendous archive of information carrying with him to get somewhere, but Dichotomy Jason will never arrive with that information as long as he's inside the construct, obeying the rules of the construct. Dichotomy Jason, as long as he only goes halfway to get to that distance before he stops and looks and sees he still has halfway to go, will never arrive at that destination inside the construct. The lesson here is that inside this experience, we will never get where we're going, ever. We're not meant to. We're here to learn, grow, adapt, and mature as spiritually immortal beings. I've said this many times on my channel, but the dichotomy paradox is real. It's a lesson for us in here, and it makes sense of our dilemma. I say this all the time. We are not here to save the world. Not because it's not worth saving, but because it doesn't even exist. This is a perceived reality, not an actual reality. I already see it coming. There's going to be some memes. There's going to be some memes of Dichotomy Jason. I already see it. I got some real clowns in this community. So, many times the process of discovery doesn't lend us the necessary time to process what is discovered. Over and over, we've had to stop. As a community together, we've had to stop and go in a whole other direction and relax and just quit talking about certain topics because people were starting to vibrate on a real negative frequency, or just, I understand, I'm very in tune with my community and I get it. You guys know I have a habit. Before I go to sleep, I'm always looking at the comments from the video before. Whatever live video I've done, I'm looking at the comments. I'm getting the temperament of my community. I'm often answering questions in a following video that I read in the comment sections. I'm very in tune to you guys. And there's been many times where the community has had to stop, pause, pattern break, go in another direction, do other type of videos because it becomes information overload. And sometimes we're not afforded the time to process, fully process the things that we've discovered. So one of those things, and I had to release several videos about it, was to demonstrate and just show you incidents in the historical record that absolutely prove that the sun is local and that cataclysms and eyewitness events were local. They had been quarantined to certain areas that other cities and localities should have seen but didn't. Shows us only in a holo field can a plane that is supposed to all be well lit by the sun, only in a holo field could a city go through some type of destruction and cataclysm, and that the whole sky be covered and the sun do all kinds of erratic stuff, and yet all the neighbors would never see it. And yet when neighbors came and saw the destruction of the city and heard the accounts, they're just baffled. Like, we didn't see anything like that. Nothing like that happened. This has happened so many times. The sun is a local phenomenon, meaning it's holographic. Now, this necessarily implies that if something is true somewhere, it's probably true everywhere. If the sun is holographic and the moon seems plasmoid and sometimes you can see the stars through the moon, then the moon's holographic. And if the sun and the moon is holographic, then anything in the visual field we see in the sun would be holographic as well. And if all that's holographic, then the stellosphere at night when we're looking up at the sky is probably a multi-tiered hologram as well, even mimicking parallax when we disbelieve it's there. Like in the 1890s, when astronomers decided to measure for parallax and couldn't find any. So I call it the similosphere. we're inside the smellosphere, and it's very difficult to prove that an environment is artificial from within it, especially when you're wearing the very artificiality of the environment you're accusing to be fake. That's what your avatar is. Your avatar isn't you. This is not Jason. This is a part of the construct that allows Jason, who's within, to move through it and do all kinds of things. This is how I enjoy the construct, by borrowing a piece from it. But the only way the construct can really interface with me is in my downtime. I got to give this avatar back to the construct at least once a day. If I take 2 or 3 days before I do it, all kinds of weird things start happening to me. You have to go to sleep so that the construct can do whatever it needs to do to the avatar, so you can continually using it in a healthy way. So on my channel, I've talked about Archaix's basilisk. The reason I believe that no AI technology is being developed today, it's just an increase in processing power. I'm in communication with people that research deep learning, machine learning, people who develop algorithms for all kinds of things. You guys know that my side project is date sequence predictive analytics, and I've developed my own software, and I've had a lot of help doing it. But I am convinced 100% that we are nowhere near even achieving AI. It's all marketing bullshit. It is an increase in processing power, and it's new technology that is invasive, that allows this processing to be done across multiple servers, invasive all the way into people's computers to pull information out and do all these things. And they're calling it AI. It does not mimic intelligence. It's still input-output. I've got a lot of professionals that agree with me. People who are in the know in the IT field, that AI doesn't truly exist. It's just marketing bullshit. Therefore, this kind of goes in sync with another belief that I carry. This is not anything I can prove, but I believe that we are subject to an AI I call Archaix's basilisk. We're already subject to an AI, AIX, Artificial Intelligence X. It is a part of the acronym of Archaix, Advanced Research of Chronological History of Artificial Intelligence X. The entire history of the world is a construct of an AI that is specifically trying to get us to believe that we live in a real world and not an artificial one. So this experience can't be singular sims. There's too much evidence that other people have had memories from a previous experience, but that previous experience was within the programming, the perimeters of the programming of whatever was going on in the field. Meaning, an 8-year-old kid is examined by doctors, and the 8-year-old kid exhibits very detailed, specific memories, but they're from the frames of reference of an 80-year-old who was bedridden for 5 years before they died in the village just 2 miles down the road. These stories are so common now that I have to, like I said, if something is true somewhere, it's probably true everywhere. Therefore, in the Archaix paradigm, reincarnation, transmigration of souls through the construct, I call this life sims. We are living life sims. And to me, it makes perfect sense that the oversoul would never put somebody in here. What about an 8-year-old kid that just got totally violated and then died of a sickness? Or what about children that die, when they're really young? No, the oversoul's giving multiple life sims. Maybe we've all been that kid that died at 3, that's stillborn birth, disease-ridden, plague-ridden 6-year-old, car accident at 4 years old. Maybe hit by a car on my bicycle at 7 years old. Maybe we've all taken turns being that kid. I don't know. But to me, the oversoul would give equal footing to everyone. And if you didn't get a fair shake this time, it's probably because you got one last time or you got one coming. But life sims. And then when this whole experience is over, we're probably going to be absolutely astounded about how cool God really is. And how this whole experience was awesome ex post facto. Doesn't feel so awesome while we're living it. So in the course of my research, I've come to find that the physics idea that objects have an informed field makes perfect sense to me, and I've adopted it. And I realize I have an informed field. It may be my spirit, soul, whatever, but that informed field seems to carry every bit of information I've ever come in contact with my entire life, every belief system, every fight, every argument, everything I've ever said, everything I've ever assumed to be true, anything I've ever witnessed, any information I've ever come in contact in my entire life has been absorbed and recorded and is in my informed field. And my informed field on a daily basis interfaces with the overfield, which allows me to build my life. If I'm depressed, then dark aspects of my reality start manifesting. If I'm real happy, I'm jovial, and I'm elated, and I'm moving through life like everything is amusing, then my life becomes a magical experience, and nothing matters, and all good things just flow to me without effort. If I look at money as energy instead of something that needs to be tangible and protected, then money does exactly what it's supposed to do. It flows to me. These are the conclusions I've come across all this huge amount, 900 and something videos. You know, I mean, there's matter of fact, this is 899 videos on Archaix, but I've got almost 200 on Archaix TV. And I probably have another 100 in podcast that I've done on other people's channels in the past 4 years. But this is nothing's changed. It's all the same message. It's just I'm always saying the same things in different ways. But nothing has changed in the Archaix paradigm. All these things are outlined in my glossary on archaix.com. I have a whole separate page on my website called Archaix Glossary Syllabus. And you can read all these concepts. You can go all the way down and see these things. But this idea that I live in a world where something is possible, as magical as the placebo effect. The very fact the placebo effect is a thing tells me that I live in an artificial construct and that I can actually create the very events I wish to feel. Remember, the photo negative of a real reality. All these people blame Jesus. All these people are basically accusing Jesus. Man, you healed me, or man, you can heal me. If you wanted to, you can make me heal. I touched you because I knew you could heal me. And Jesus, over and over, Jesus probably got tired of rebuking people. Man, don't you know, man? I didn't heal you. By your own words, you were healed. By your own faith, you were healed. By your own walk, you were healed. By your own activity, you were healed. Jesus always told another soul, "Why didn't have anything to do with that? I didn't have anything to do with that. It was you." So that's the value of the placebo effect. I know I've missed concepts. I know that there are many other things that I've discussed in Archaix that I totally missed, but this is a very comprehensive overview of who, what, when, why, where, and how of Archaix and the trajectory of this community, because that's what we are. We're a community. There's a lot of things I would have never been able to accomplish had you guys not sent me the information to even read, sent me the books to look at, sent me the PDFs to study. Yeah, on my own, I was already a published author, like 13 books before I ever started a YouTube channel, but I would have never been where I am today had I not had this exchange of information, an exchange of love, an exchange of brotherhood and sisterhood with the community. You guys made all this possible. So this is just a transitive video, meaning we're phasing into another form of Archaix. This is we got 15.2 years. Well, I mean, like I said, I'm not going to be that guy. I am not going to be that guy that people blame, because I know the trajectory of Archaix. Even if it's not me and there's a different host to Archaix in the future, I already know this community is going to grow and expand, because that's what we are. We're errants. We're going a different way. The construct teaches us to go this way. Dungeon programming, negative default programming, it's all there. All the traps are set. But that's why we're errants, because an errant goes their own way, creates their own programming, and defies the construct. Because in essence, if you were to take everything Jesus ever taught, there's one verse and one parable that matter. The rest of it is just common sense. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you is the golden law. But the ultimate parable is the parable of the prodigal son. The oversoul had value in the child that rebelled, in the child that went their own way, discovered the world their own way, fell, lost all their money, tripped, living under a bridge, starved for a while. It's the child that experienced the world and not the child that had stayed home that was rewarded. That's my presentation, guys. This is the Archaix paradigm. This is the essentials of this community. These are the things that majority of us hold to be true. Not all of you. You're not required to hold any of these things to be true. Many of you just watch me because I'm a passive aggressive, semi-psychotic, Central East Texas country boy, and you never know what's going to come out of my mouth. Some of you watch me for entertainment value. I get it. But there are souls among you that are here for the real information, and I give it to you as best as I can. So that's my presentation, guys. I really appreciate the donations. What you don't know is I'm about to go on a secret trip, and you're going to see it as soon as I send you the pictures next week. But I'm going on a secret trip next week. I'm going to blow some people's minds. So I could definitely use that cash. Absolutely. I'll be doing a live video from there too. I'm just not telling anybody until I get there. But yeah, the Zodiac's going to be awesome. The new Zodiac revelations, the Nemesis ecliptic. Yeah, it changes everything, guys. It changes everything. Doesn't mean the Zodiac after 713 didn't become a system. It doesn't mean after Ptolemy it didn't become a good system for divination, because the Zodiac is essentially stellar programming. What are stars? They're just bits of information in the field. They carry information. We can glean information from them. Doesn't mean they're wrong. But if I was an astrologer, I would really be trying to get the nuts and bolts out of everything about the original Zodiac and what it means, because our world is going back on the dark stars ecliptic. And when we do, the Tychus Bode mathematical distribution of worlds to the soul system will be perfect again. In the book of Revelation, in the second trumpet is when it happens. When that happens, our world, just like in the book of Isaiah and Jeremiah say, the world will be removed from its place. That's what it says in the prophecies, and it describes it in Revelation. And when it does, all we're going to do is go back to where we belong, which was on the Nemesis ecliptic, which means all the world's going around the sun this way, we are going to be going north to south like we used to, which creates a totally different zodiacal belt. All right, let's see what we got. Oh, we got a little word from our sponsor again. Let's play that. I'm going to play that a couple more times before I hit my outro, but he got a cool little jingle. Somebody said there might have been a problem with it before. Man, it's a pretty good little tune. That's pretty good little music there. What's that? Club clothes? Is that what we got here? Some club clothes? Let's go clubbing. Peter and Noah, Steady Stride Designs. That's his commercial. He's the one that, this is a pretty good video here today, so he'll be pretty proud. His commercial was his little commercial endorsement was for this video right here. Remember, all the ads you see on the videos here, they will be posted in a special section on archaix.com. I'm just waiting for a few of them to build up. We've already done 5 of them now. So Pretty soon, I'm going to have a whole page of all. It's just going to be an errant resources page where everybody, I don't care how many hundreds of people got their ads there, where you guys, hey, it's time for our own little microeconomy. Appreciate that, Peter and Noah. That was all right. I'm going to go and hit my outro. Love you guys. I love you guys, but it's time to eat.